Welcome once again to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your long-suffering host, Dusty O'Connell, still the host with the moster, and returning after a relatively long podcast hiatus. Someone who has not been on hiatus this entire time is Vikings blogger extraordinaire, generally useful human. You will find his work at 1500ESPN.com, coldomaha.com, and here at Norse Code, his own little podcast playground, Arif Hassan. How you doing, Arif?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I feel refreshed. How was your Valentine's Day? Did you do anything?
Chelsea and I worked next to each other at a cafe instead of at home.
That is delightfully romantic.
It was. I held her hand once.
Wow, Arif touched a woman. You heard it here.
I've been dating for 4 years, man. I've done more than that. Just saying.
I'm glad you're taking it to the next level.
Right.
Woo, first base. One of my friends tipped me off to a pretty sweet rose sale at Whole Foods yesterday, and so I was able to seem like a very generous significant other without really being that generous. And,
that's incredible. Also, It's a good thing that Todd hasn't listened to Norse Code.
He's tried. He's like, I got about 10 minutes in, and then you guys just get too far into the football, and I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, really? Because most of the criticism we get is that we don't get to football quickly enough.
Well, that's because people actually listen to this show for the football sometimes. I don't know why.
Weirdos.
Right? What's that about? But no, so as restaurant people, we hate going out on Valentine's Day because it's like amateur hour. It's like the second busiest restaurant day in America, like right behind Mother's Day. So there were roses, and we just grilled some steaks and watched Michael Bolton's Big Sexy Valentine's Day special.
Oh yeah, that's on Netflix. I assume that's a joke. Is it good?
Well, okay, so Andy Samberg plays Kenny G.
Okay, so it's incredible.
And it is directed by Akiva, like one of the other guys from Lonely Island. And Michael Bolton does briefly sing a section from Captain Jack Sparrow, if you're familiar with his track on the second Lonely Island album. So if you're into any of those things, then strongly recommend. Otherwise, skip it.
If you don't like its defining thing, then you won't like it.
If you're familiar with any of those things and they made you laugh, then get it. If you're familiar with the show, then you will know that this is customarily when we, pass around the, I guess, I don't really want to make it like we'll pass around the hat. It's an opportunity for you to contribute a couple of bucks to keeping the lights on here at Norse Code. And, it's the off season. So especially in the last year or two, this is something that I wasn't that concerned about in years past, but in the last couple of years, we've seen a real proliferation of Vikings podcasts. And it's not just Andy Carlson doing it. There are, frankly, I'm not convinced that he has any thoughts that don't end up on the internet, which is fine. I admire that about him. But this part of the year, there's just only so much to talk about. And there's lots more people talking about it than there has been before. And so it may seem like we're being lazy, but it's just how many times can you answer the who should we draft question? But we come back to, I guess, check in, regale you with the latest in Vikings news. We've actually got a pretty good episode lined up for you. I tip of the cap again to Arif for doing most of my work for me so that I can basically just sit down and talk. But if you think that the content that we provide you is worth anything, then we would really appreciate it if you threw us a couple of bucks at either paypal.me/NorseCode or patreon.com/NorseCode, whether you would like to make a one-time contribution or become a recurring subscriber. I would also like to tip my cap to Google.com not for rescinding the extra Google Drive storage that I got for buying a particular Android phone a few years ago, but they took away a bunch of my Google Drive space, And most of that space is used to store Norse code stuff. Thankfully, I can still write show rundowns with Arif's help. But it is because of the support of listeners like you that I will be able to purchase more Google Drive space so that I can continue, supporting the archive, and we can continue generating and then storing long pre-show and post-show clips for the inevitable clip shows that will result. So thanks to everyone who's contributed in the past. And if you believe that anything we do is worth anything to you at all, then maybe skip the latte this month and give that tree fitty to Norse Code, either at paypal.me/Norse Code or patreon.com/Norse Code. On to the show. So the Super Bowl was not as fun to watch. Well, okay, so part of it was really fun. Part of it was really not fun.
I find this interesting because, like, after the Super Bowl was over, and I understand, like, part of this has to do with, like, deadlines and stuff like that, and, like, extremely recent recency bias. But, like, a lot of articles were written that this was the best Super Bowl ever. I don't know if you saw those headlines. I saw those headlines.
Well, it was a very unique Super Bowl in a lot of ways. It was the biggest comeback ever in a Super Bowl by a long shot. It was the only Super Bowl ever to go to overtime.
Twice the previous comeback. Yeah, twice the previous biggest comeback.
More than twice.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, like, in that sense, you had a thing.
And it was very exciting towards the end. I mean, it was both exciting and baffling to see all the ways that Atlanta just, like, chose not to win the game.
5 consecutive scoring drives by the Patriots. I feel like chose is the correct word here.
Well, no, they had like 3 to 5 discrete plays that, could have prevented. I mean, all they had to do was prevent one of those 5 scores.
Yeah.
And they chose not to, which was...
Not only did they choose not to, they also essentially chose not to score. Like, because all you have to... So there's 10 drives left. 5 of theirs, 5 of yours. Either, not both, either you stop them from scoring on one of their 5 drives, or you yourself score on one of your 5 drives. Should not be a problem. You scored on like 4 consecutive drives to begin the game. Feels like it's in your wheelhouse. No.
Well, and all they had to do was just like not score and not let New England score every time, which they actually did a pretty great job of in the first half. But Kyle Shanahan just like threw away the playbook and was like, what would be really great is if we tried a bunch of really risky pass plays in the second half.
Yeah, it was fun. Anyway, we weren't here to recap the Super Bowl.
But we did.
Something else we need to recap involving the Super Bowl.
Yes, specifically want to recap the props that we selected for the Super Bowl, which we didn't win them all. Goes without saying, but I'd say we did pretty well. Although hindsight is always 20/20, but we did miss out on one major free money bet. And I mean, I guess this wasn't quite the lock that shirtless Anthony Kiedis was. But
what did we miss out
on? Blonde Lady Gaga.
What? No, I put that down, didn't I?
I think we talked about it. I didn't commit to throwing money down on it. It's not bolded in the list from the previous episode.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we didn't bold it just because it was like minus 250 or something.
Well, no, it was minus 400.
That's it. Yeah. So, it's not really free money in the same way.
Well, and I don't know if they closed action. I imagine all the books probably closed action like right when this happened, but they showed a clip of Lady Gaga like stretching out on the field with blonde hair before the game started.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that the whole part where she like stood on the edge of the stadium being patriotic and then dove in was pre-recorded, whereupon she had blonde hair.
No. Really?
Yeah, and to prevent continuity errors, her hair had to be blonde for the rest of the show.
Oh my god. Yeah, I could say it was minus 400.
Anyway, we whiffed on the 0 turnover.
That was plus 550, so okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That was a sweet looking long shot.
Big, but yeah.
We whiffed on Tom Brady minus 310 yards, or under 310 and a half yards.
Yeah. We whiffed on Tom Brady negative 310.5 yards.
Whoops. Tom Brady -1 passing yard. Oops. Dion Lewis with over 2.5 receptions was a wise bet, as was Matt Ryan's passing yards.
That one was easy.
That was easy. Austin Hooper, Tevin Coleman, and Danny Amendola's receiving yards all came in, right?
Yeah, they all did. I mean, the premise of these bets also checked in that like the primary passing options just wouldn't be very good passing options in this game. I think because Julio hit his under because his over-under was 95, and we told the under. We said the under. And I think he hit it. He was at like 80, which made me nervous for a bit too. And then I think Edelman was the other one. I think he might have hit his over on yards, but not reception. I don't remember now. But I remember the point was to take the under on the two primary receiving options for each team and take the over on essentially literally everybody else. And almost everybody else hit their over except like one player who went out or something like that.
Yes. I regret my enthusiasm for the roughing up the passer penalty being called. And I really thought
I gave you the numbers for that, man. I gave you the numbers.
Well, I really thought, well, and especially coming into the second half, I was like, there's no way that Tom Brady escapes this half without a roughing the passer penalty. But then Atlanta's defense just like went to sleep. So that was the end of that for me. But yeah, no, I the general premise of us, and to a lesser extent, setting the edge, was correct. That there would be a lot of yards and receptions coming in unconventional ways, which if you were wise enough to place props alongside Arif, you probably had a satisfactory Super Bowl, even if you were, crying into your chicken wings shortly thereafter.
How did the bolded locks do? I think one of them was the passers with a pass attempt, and that we hit on.
Oh gosh, I just
Did you just close it?
Yep.
I want to know how the bold ones did.
Well, so we whiffed on 0 turnovers, and the only other bolded one was, players with pass attempts over 2.5.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm so glad that happened. I thought we lost our opportunity with Martellus Bennett because it looked like he was about to throw a pass before he got hit behind the line of scrimmage. But then, the quarterback from Kent State, he did it.
Turned out not to matter. We found another one, and that was that would have been the best place to put all the money at plus 185 on 5 dimes at the time we recorded the show when we were making the props.
So yeah, so if you followed all our props and put an even amount of money on all of them, I'm pretty confident you would have came out ahead. I came out ahead. I did not put an even money on all of them though, so I can't use myself as a benchmark.
Yeah, and if you put all your money on Atlanta to beat the spread, then sucks for you.
I can't believe that like the probably closest game from like a time remaining perspective. I suppose you could include the game against the Seahawks. One of the two. Well, no, because it's overtime. The only overtime game that New England played. So it's the closest game that New England played in the Super Bowl was also the one where they had the highest point differential. Isn't that nuts? Because it's like 6 points, which was that game. And it's like 4-3-3-3-3-2 or something like that, which also screw you, New England.
The win probability graph for that game is just it's just ludicrous. It's a heart attack on a plate.
It is. It's nuts. I have been wondering about win probability graphs because you always tweet them out when the only time people tweet them out is either you're a fan of the team and they just put a beat down on someone and you just see this flat line. Or, more likely, you're anyone else, including a fan of the team, that had an improbable comeback. And so I think it's led to this perception that probability win graphs are bad and not accurate and not useful, which there's some interesting research. I'll probably link it in the show notes, actually, about this, where some probability win graphs are actually not very good. So, for example... And here's the weird thing, is that the way probability win graphs are designed is that they're designed to be generally right and then have some issues at the margins. Essentially like every model, right? Where at the margins there's some issues. Most of the time in most situations where you use models, that's not an issue because you're not going to have that many edge cases. But the way that probability win graphs work in their application to football, you're literally only going to use them when those edge cases appear. Yeah. At the end of games when the score is close. So
people only want to talk about edge cases. And yeah, like you were saying, the only reason anybody wants to bust out a win probability graph on Twitter is to take either side of the look at this massive lock.
Yeah.
Like belief. And
so I'm wondering about this. The thing is, New England shouldn't, like, I don't think New England's win in this case is evidence that it's wrong. Because like New England was the only team out of like the last 210 teams to be in X situation, like with that many points down with that much time remaining. I know that like different people tweeted out different versions of the stat at different points in the game. It's like, you know, teams with a 20-point lead at halftime have won 0 out of the last however many times, or teams, you know, down 25 at the beginning of the third quarter or at the middle of the third quarter have won 0 out of 210 times.
No team has ever derp. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is actually evidence that the probability win graph was actually probably accurate in this case. But there are some instances where it doesn't seem to be accurate because if you take a look, for example, at the fourth down bot by the New York Times, which uses a fairly standard win probability model produced in part by the people at Advanced Football Analytics, which have actually now been hired by ESPN. There's an edge case where if you've got like no timeouts left and there's 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something on the clock, and you're 2 points down, and it's fourth down, and you're in field goal range. And by field goal range, I mean there's like an 85% probability that you'll make the field goal if you kick it. The win probability graph says you only have like a 55% chance of winning, when obviously your chance of winning is 85%. That's your field goal make percentage. There's no other way, right? And so in that case, the edge case is like wrong. But, I think that people disparage win probability graphs maybe too much, even if there are these problems, just because the only times we see them, like we've brought up twice now, is in those cases, like in instances where they are necessarily wrong.
They're like popcorn. They're fun to look at, but they're not predictive of anything. They're just a measure of probability that suffers when you start bringing edge cases into it, and it's just one of those things that's only interesting in edge cases.
Yeah. I don't know if they ever tell you anything that you don't already know.
They tell you which team was winning the game.
It's true.
Which
I guess I didn't know that.
If only there was another way to tell.
Yeah, they are only actionable in cases where they are not actionable because they have problems at the margins. And I still like them, but like...
Well, because it's fun to look at, like, a massive shift in win probability towards the end of a close game. Like, that's...
Yeah, and also for a while I was watching... So, Advanced Football Analytics, again, before they were all hired by ESPN... By there, I think it's just Brian Burke and he was hired. I shouldn't say they all. Like, one of the writers, Sterling Zhu, I think writes for Numberfire now or something like that. So they weren't all hired by, but Brian Burke was hired by ESPN. Before that happened, they had live win probability graphs. That was actually kind of cool to have like on a screen.
It's like that's football team's heartbeat.
Yeah. And in close games, it was really friggin' cool because you could, at the end of games, there would be these not wild swings, but you could tell like how bad punting in that situation really was. Like that, I think that was cool. And that's really better live as like an experience to have in the corner of your eye while you're a fan. Like, holy crap, they couldn't convert the 3rd and 2. And then you take a look at the win probability graph and it shows you punting. And it's like it spikes to the other side because it's a close game. That's really cool because you kind of know the magnitude of the error. And it's just like kind of cool to have that information. But without live win probability graphs, which I guess they kind of have at ESPN now that I think about it, but those are a little bit harder to find. It's, not as interesting to have.
Final Super Bowl footnote. We've talked in the past about how cool it would be to have like VR enabled, like all 22 footage where you could like be in the stands and like, turn your head 360 degrees and like look around. And Fox implemented this to some degree in the sense that they built you like a virtual club room where you could, because they only had like 6 cameras that weren't even like proper 360-degree cameras covering the field for their like quote unquote VR presentation. But you could put on your Daydream or your Cardboard or your Oculus or whatever VR headset you probably don't have, and like look around the club room and also sort of watch the game. And if anyone, I didn't bother because I would actually rather watch the football game, but I really believe in the power of VR to generate a more interesting viewing experience. And if you happen to be one of those people who was an early adopter and watched part of the Super Bowl with a VR headset on, then shoot us an email at norsecodepodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at norsecodedn, and we'll rap about it. I'm curious to see if anyone had an experience that was not underwhelming with that. But I don't know. My feeling is football right now is pretty much only fun if you're like a New England garbage person or the owner of a team. If you're Roger Goodell or one of the owners, you're making $1 bazillion. Teams or cities are like fighting over like the opportunity to make the taxpayers build you a stadium. New England, for whatever reason, just can't be stopped. They can lose Tom Brady for 4 games, and then he can just not show up for the first half of a game, and they'll still win the stupid Super Bowl. So
stupid bowl.
Stupid bowl. And like the other 31 teams are just there to be like, I guess, fiddling in the wings as the New England Patriots go on to write more of a stupid NFL legacy. And frankly, I just like wanted to, hang it up. Like I walked out of my friend's house after the Super Bowl and I was like, you know what? I might actually be okay with just being done with football forever. Like, this is just a frustrating exercise in futility. And I felt that way for a while. I felt that way for like a couple of weeks.
You've had Patriots-related ennui for weeks?
Well, I've had ennui about lots of things, but the Patriots comeback just like brought a lot of those feelings into much sharper focus. And then Adrian Peterson got back on Twitter. And then I was reminded that even in The Road, Cormac McCarthy's like plotting novel about a post-apocalyptic hellscape, there was still shelter. There was still an untouched fallout shelter full of food where the main character and his son were able to hole up for a while and escape the injustices of the barren wasteland that they had been, seeking solace from. I think you actually had the best quote tweet.
I don't even remember what it was.
LMAO.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who missed it, Adrian Peterson believes that the New York Giants are making some interesting moves. And by that, he means that the Giants have released 2 players whose contracts added up to about $11 million in cap space.
Yeah, it was Victor Cruz and Rashad Jennings, I think, right? Rashad Jennings.
Yes.
So cutting players who received big contracts because they are no longer effective is something that for some reason made Adrian Peterson happy. He's not the kind of person who kind of shines the light on himself, so I guess, it wasn't really, don't really think about that too much. But, this goes back to like an old Norse code maxim. He just says shit. He just says like stupid shit like all the time, and for a while we loved him for it, and then we kind of hated him for it, and now we're kind of in between the two things. We're definitely rolling our eyes all the time. So I think the earliest instance of us like realizing that this was a truth and not just like he's a person and people say shit, the fact that it was like an Adrian Peterson says shit, probably when he called the NFL owners slave owners. That was probably like a bad move, and that was probably one of the first of many moves where he just says shit.
That was like my reaction was the Captain Picard facepalm.
Right. And like people tried to make the point for him that like, oh, he wasn't saying, he's oppressed or whatever. he's saying that like, labor movement in the NFL is suspiciously one-sided, which is true. But that's not what he said. Yeah, he said that the players were slaves.
A very obtuse way to say it, if that's what he even meant, which, we at Norse Code are not convinced of because, as Arif said, one of our maxims is that Adrian Peterson just says shit.
Yeah, man. And, we're insulated from it a lot of time, but like during the suspension, so many things came out of him having said shit, or he would say shit, and we'd just be like, Adrian. For example, and a lot of people already forget that this happened, maybe because the league decided not to add another punishment on top of the year-long almost but not really suspension that they gave him, which was, remember that time he was literally in a courtroom, like bailiff right there, and he turned to the person next to him and said, wow, I smoked a bunch of weed in the bathroom.
Wait, was that in a courtroom? I thought he just admitted it like in a deposition, like to a police officer or to an officer of the court.
He was in the courtroom. I don't know, like maybe he said that to the officer of the court, but he did say it happened just now.
Jeez. Well, that's another perfect example. Adrian Peterson just says shit.
Whatever. I can't remember all the times he just said it. He did also just now, or not just now, but like after he tweeted that, like someone tweeted at him. They had already deleted their tweet, but someone tweeted at him something like "Please stay" or "I'd hate it if you went" or whatever. Because they ended up apologizing because they said this isn't what he meant. But he quote tweeted it saying, "That fast they'll change on you. Not all fans, but the fake ones.
Just the fake fans.
Fake fans, man. It's an epidemic. Fake fans. They only like you if they're on your team.
There are so many fake Adrian Peterson fans right now.
Right.
There are so many.
When it's no longer cool to like Adrian Peterson, they're off the bandwagon.
You spend 3 years underperforming, being a burden on your team, and all of a sudden all the real fans just run for the friggin' fire doors. Yeah. Yeah, Adrian. Ugh, I wonder what Giants fans think about that. Are they excited? Like when was the last time the Giants had a running back?
I mean, David Wilson was pretty good before, like, they kept benching him for stupid reasons, and then he got a neck injury and had to retire.
That's true, but that was like, what, 5 or 6 years ago?
It was. I thought that was recent. You're right. That was 5 or 6 years ago.
That was a hot minute.
Giants fans are big fans of the guy that they got, Paul Perkins, third round, second round, running back from last year. Mostly a pass-catching running back, so I think that probably they'll end up getting someone to complement him. I don't think that the Giants think that he is a running back solution. Otherwise, they probably would have run Shane Vereen into the ground when they had the opportunity, and they didn't. And I think that they think of Shane Vereen and Paul Perkins as very similar backs. So I think the Giants don't think it, but fans might think that he's an every down back. I guess you'd have to go to like Ahmad Bradshaw before David Wilson, because David Wilson's kind of cheating as an answer too, right? Like, because he wasn't the guy, he just could have been.
Yeah, but that's basically where like Adrian is headed if he doesn't. Okay, so let me ask you this: no running back in the league is like guaranteed more than, or no team is going to have to pay more than $10 million in cap space for any back next year, right?
The highest paid running back, sans Adrian, is like $8.7 million, right? And that's LaShawn McCoy, who is quite clearly one of the top 3, 4, 5 running backs in the NFL, depending on your opinions of like Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson and stuff.
Yeah. So say we cut Adrian Peterson, which I think nearly everyone who listens to the show would agree is the smart money move. If the Giants pick him up, what do they pay him? Like 2 years, $14 million?
That's way too much. That is way too much.
1 year, $5 million? 2 years, $8 million?
I think 1 year, $5 million makes sense. And I think that's, a world where we assume that there's competition for his services. And I think the competition would produce what, in my eyes, would be an overpriced contract at $5 million.
Do you buy into any of the, discussion that Peterson would be a good fit for the Packers?
I mean, in the sense that he is a running back and they want a running back. but like I don't think that he would be a solution for them.
Well, I don't want to talk more about that than we just did, because I would rather save the rest of my thoughts for later in the show.
One note: when LaDainian Tomlinson did his final tour of duty with the Jets, earned an average of $2.6 million over the course of a 2-year salary. So he had a $5.2 million salary over the course of 2 years, base salary of $1 million with signing bonus prorated and stuff like that, with like roster bonus and stuff too. So I don't know if Adrian's even going to get $5 million, with those parameters in mind. That a player like Tomlinson, first ballot Hall of Famer, doesn't in his final 2 years in the NFL earn over $3 million. And that was a different cap environment, 2011. But I don't know that the cap environment is so different that it would multiply his salary by 2.5.
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to think of like reasons why the LaDainian Tomlinson situation isn't like a good comparison, but it kind of is. Like, between the injuries that he suffered in San Diego, like limiting his performance, and then I guess accusations levied by some, which totally like journalistically tight, right? Accusations levied by some that he was being misused by the offense, by a Norv Turner offense.
No less.
Right? Like it's getting harder and harder for me to like convince myself that these are not actually that similar.
Yeah, and Tomlinson was a year younger than Adrian is now.
Yeah, and actually less injured somehow than Adrian is now. Like, all right, so what we're drilling down to is like actually it should be like 1 year, $2.75 million.
Right. I think the difference with Tomlinson is that his name didn't have, for some reason, the allure that Adrian Peterson's name currently does.
No, I don't think that's true either.
You don't think so?
Well, okay. We have a Adrian Peterson maxim on North Code, and like we don't really go that like far into like player maxims other than our formula that Christian Ponder sucks, and the belief that Joe Webb is like a freako athlete. I mean, beyond that, we're pretty like reticent about individual player takes.
Yeah.
At least to the degree that we have them about. Oh my
God, what an athlete!
Freakish. But like Adrian Peterson is kind of out. Like, we're willing to stake our reputations, whatever they're worth, on this, because he does just like say stupid shit. And LaDainian Tomlinson never really like, where's his camel? Where's his like year-long like distracting BS story that he makes worse like himself? And I mean, Tomlinson was like almost universally loved in San Diego. It was very frustrating for everyone, especially Phillip Rivers, if you looked at his face, that Tomlinson just could not like pull the trigger when needed and bring San Diego anywhere close to a Super Bowl win.
Yeah, it still feels like Adrian's going to get more. Like, I don't know, like, I don't have a good reason now. Because that Tomlinson comparison is, like, I think very useful and interesting. And they are different types of backs. Like, there's this perception, or maybe this is the reason. There's this perception or sense that, like, guys who play like big backs, and Adrian, I think, plays more like a big back than he is a big back. Because at the Combine, he was 217 pounds, 6'1". He was not like dense in terms of like weight divided by height,
Well, yeah, but he was 217 pounds that you couldn't bring down.
Right, exactly. So he played like a big back. But for guys who play like big backs, there's this perception that they can have a longer career as a running back, as a short yardage guy to like close out their career, which actually has not happened that often. Like it happened to like Emmitt Smith, right? And I guess it happened to Jerome Bettis, although one could argue that was like his entire career instead of the end of his career.
It just kept going like the Energizer Bunny. Like it just would never quit.
Yeah. But I think for the most part, we've seen Hall of Fame running backs, even the big ones, generally just stop being running backs instead of deciding to be goal line backs. And I think that, LaDainian Tomlinson, that was unlikely that, he was going to, be with the Jets and be the goal line running back.
But dude, is Adrian Peterson going to be a goal line back? Come on, man. Come on.
I don't know.
This comparison is actually, I don't know if you meant it this way initially, but it is becoming, frighteningly prescient.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I did not... I was looking for, a tangential case, and this one is less tangential and more it fits all the parameters.
Plus,
it still feels like he's going to get more.
Well, he's going to try, and he's got a great agent. I mean, I guarantee you that Adrian Peterson is looking at this from the perspective of, well, how old is the oldest running back to ever play in the NFL? I can do that.
Yes, no, that he is.
That is exactly the point that he's approaching this from, and it really just becomes a question of who's going to indulge that sentiment for the most money.
Right.
I think he wants it to be the Giants. I don't know if he necessarily cares. It's really hard to know what he's actually thinking.
When the Giants did it, some people did write speculation that they were gearing up for an Adrian Peterson run, which is asinine. You get rid of underperforming players who cost a lot because of underperforming players who cost a lot. That's the that's done. You don't need more reasoning. Well, and especially it's not for an underperforming player who costs a lot.
Well, and what's so funny to me is that what is the biggest unit problem that the Giants have right now? It's their offensive line, right?
Yeah.
So why would you dump a bunch of players who are underperforming on the offense to pay a bunch of money to another player who is extremely likely to underperform on your offense, especially if you don't spend any money fixing existing problems?
Especially because you didn't spend money fixing the existing problem that matches to the underperformance. If everyone is making an argument, or for example, if Peterson's agent can make the argument to the Giants, hey man, Adrian Peterson would have definitely averaged more than 1.9 yards a carry if he was behind a halfway competent offensive line. By the way, do you have that?
well, if we had Adrian Peterson, maybe he could run block or something for us. Oh wait, no, it's an odd fit.
Yeah, and so he definitely wants to play in Dallas or Houston if possible. Seems like it's unlikely to happen in Dallas, although that would, it is for literally any running back, be the best fit. I love the whenever they matched a running back to Dallas, they'd be like, oh, he'd be a really good fit there. Well, yeah, they've got the best run blocking unit in a decade. What? Who's not a good fit there? I guess Darren McFadden wasn't that great a fit because he's bad, and Christine Michael wasn't a good fit because he's bad. So I guess those were not good fits, but people were yeah, no, Adrian Peterson would be good behind that Dallas offensive line, as if you couldn't put. I don't want to detract from Ezekiel Elliott because he clearly performed and he clearly put in his own work, and he led the league in yards after contact too. It's not like he didn't create his own yards in a big way, but the idea that a player would fit behind the Dallas offensive line for the mere reason that it is the Dallas offensive line has been hilarious.
Well, I mean, keys do fit in locks,
right? So he ideally wants to play for Dallas or Houston if possible. Seems like it might not be Dallas.
Oh my god, dude, Houston would be so hilarious. The only thing that would be dumber than paying Brock Osweiler all that money would be paying Adrian Peterson any money to line up behind him.
I like the idea of, remember when Bryant McKinney went to Miami and everyone was like, that's a problem. He causes most of his trouble in Miami. And then he did, and then Miami was like, oh, we shouldn't do this. You can have him, Ravens. And the Ravens are like, we'll use him for precisely 3 games. And they won a Super Bowl. But Bryant McKinney in Miami, not great. I feel like Houston is Adrian's Miami.
Well, and the worst thing is that with all the Texas connections and the echo chamber that surrounds Adrian that we've talked about, no one's going to tell him not to do it, especially if Houston offers, like if Houston again misjudges the market for players at a given position and just like gives him a check and he's like, just write a number on this check. I'll sign it right now.
Well, so that was my next question. Like, how much of a discount would he like? Let's say that one of the teams that he was interested in a while back, Tampa Bay, and the reason he was interested was Leslie Frazier, who's no longer there. But like, let's say like a team like Tampa Bay was like, okay, we'll give you money, right? How much money would he? And there's a similar climate, so that's probably not as big a concern.
Let's make this a more fun thought experiment. Let's say instead of Tampa Bay, let's say it's the Jacksonville Jaguars as they exist right now.
Okay, sure, right. They've got a ton of money. They need a running back. They're hilarious. Jacksonville Jaguars. How much money do they offer versus the amount of money that Houston would hypothetically offer before Adrian says yes to Jacksonville instead of Houston? Like, what's the difference? Like, does he need another $1 million per year from Jacksonville versus Houston? 2, 3?
Well, in Houston, he's going to be behind Lamar Miller, right?
Maybe.
Probably. I mean, he's going to be like, okay, well, let's make it a best case scenario, and he splits 50-50 with Lamar Miller, and that would be a situation where in Jacksonville he would be probably. I mean, Chris Ivory is I don't know if injury prone is the right word, but maybe he
was previously injured. How about that?
Yeah, tainted by previous injury.
That's great. That's good.
So we'll say that Adrian Peterson has the potential for 60 to 70% of carries, but in an ideal world for the Jaguars would be splitting 50-50 or maybe less with Ivory.
Yeah. So high usage backup in Houston or high usage committee in Jacksonville.
With the added bonus of potentially being the only guy in Jacksonville and a significantly lower propensity of that in Houston. I think I don't think it would have to be that much more money. I think given everything we know about Peterson and our Maxim, $1 million a year would probably be enough.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable to you?
So then let's like what if his usage is guaranteed to be similar with another team that has a similar title shot as Houston? So like we equalize, winning probability, we equalize climate concerns, we equalize usage concerns.
Oh, then he goes to Houston every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
That is not in Texas.
No, Houston every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Okay, Houston minus $1 million versus the other city.
Depends on how many millions we're talking about.
Okay.
If the baseline number of millions is 3 or more, then I say he goes to Houston and takes the $1 million pay cut. I think he would get paid as little as $2 million a year to go to Houston if he was being offered, 3 for an identical position with a team that has identical like win probability and a similar system and could offer him a similar number of snaps.
So then the next question following is, when he's in Houston and his friend says, you'll have so many great marketing opportunities here, you'll be able to make up the ad revenue. Not his agent, just a friend. You should play in Houston because you'll make millions of dollars just from endorsements because you're so popular here.
I don't think that factors into the way...
Echo chamber, man.
I don't think that factors into the way Peterson thinks about himself. I don't think he's concerned about endorsement dollars so much as he is his legacy. He wants...
I see what you mean. Yeah.
He wants to be known for...
money, why does the money difference matter? But I see what you mean, because the money serves as a status symbol.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not like it's the sense of your salary being tied to your worth to the team as opposed to being able to, hold a bottle of Gatorade and smile, which has never been the sort of thing. And especially since the lawsuit, those doors have been less open to him.
Right. I mean, well, it's not about like whether or not he actually has endorsement dollars waiting for him. It's about whether or not he can be convinced.
No, the point is it's for him. It's more about the status and the money.
Okay, yeah, good point. All right, next topic of discussion.
Wow, that was like one tiny line in our rundown, and we
nailed it. All right,
forgot how much fun this is. Well, all right. Now that we've had our fun, let us. We were actually talking about before the show how little we enjoy doing podcasts during the off season. But I suppose we may as well just dive into the Groundhog Day of who do we draft? What do we do in free agency? May as well get that started. At least we have an interesting, I guess, fun guy that kind of dovetails into what we were talking about. Apparently, the Jaguars don't want Kelvin Beachum anymore. Sure. And I get why. He's very expensive. At least to them.
How much should he cost them?
Like Adrian Peterson-esque numbers. I think his contract was like another $17 million over 3 years.
17 over 3? Let me take a look at. Oh my God! It was over 5 years. Oh wow! It was a 5-year, $45 million contract, an average of $9 million a year.
Oh no wonder.
Jesus.
Well, okay, so Beachum did not perform that great with Jacksonville. I think he was implicated in like 14 sacks or something.
Sure.
I had the
You're probably right. All I have is his PFF grade, which actually does not contain the statistics.
All right, well, I can... oh, man, I had...
14? There's no way. I don't know if you know that. That's a lot of sacks.
I know it is kind of a lot. Let me check out this article at Big Cat Country. This is not what I was looking for. See, this is why I try not to look up stuff live. I really wish I hadn't closed that tab. It's really harshing my mellow. Here it is. Beachum started 15 games in 2016, missing only the Week 3 loss. Per the Times Union game charting, Beachum allowed a combined 27 sacks, pressures, and hits. That's still a lot, but it's not as bad as like being responsible for 14 sacks. Second most on the team, behind some dude named Parnell.
Jeremy Parnell. They signed him from the Dallas Cowboys. He was a backup tackle there who did end up getting some spot starts. Was never considered a member of that like all-star offensive line, but played well enough to hang with the offensive line when he played. So people were pretty happy when the Jaguars got him. I guess, did he play poorly as well?
Parnell and Beachum were tied for the team lead with 10 enforced penalties apiece. Beyond that, Beachum was responsible for 11 and a half quote-unquote bad runs, sharing the half with Parnell. Plays that gained 1 or fewer yards, not including short yardage plays that resulted in a first down or touchdown. So expensive and not that great. So a perfect fit for the Vikings.
Yeah, he ranked 63 out of all tackles. Reminder, 32 teams, 2 tackles. So 64 theoretical starters. There are, of course, more than that because of injuries and whatnot. But he ranked 63 out of all the tackles in PFF's grading, which is interesting, right? So, like, 2012 rookie year, he was bad. 2013, next year, he was bad. 2014, a really good performer. He was like a top 15 tackle. He was really good. And then the next year after that, he was pretty good. He wasn't as good. He was pretty good. Top 25 tackle. It's a starting quality.
Well, it would have been better if he hadn't torn his ACL.
Right. Exactly.
Oops.
2016 bad. So perfect fit, I think.
So here's my question. The Jaguars are, let's say, not known for their talent scouting and development abilities. So other than just like the obvious reasons of the Vikings being a bad team that makes bad choices, why do we necessarily want somebody that the Jaguars don't? I mean, is he?
I mean, what
someone who
you're
ranks
crafting is the spin story for how to justify the signing. But it's not like an argument that to me is compelling. You know what I mean?
Okay, but so is our offensive line as it stands so much worse than replacement level player quality that we can take like the second to worst starter at the beginning of 2016 and pay him, probably like maybe not quite Matt Khalil money, but probably close.
So if by Matt Khalil money you mean like the money that would have gone to Matt Khalil if they were signed him, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
because I wouldn't pay him $11.5 million.
Well, okay, well, no one would. Not even the Jaguars, it turns out.
But yeah, I guess there's a good argument for that. I feel like, and this is a weird thing to say, that a year removed from an ACL, that Beachum at age 27 is healthier than Matt Khalil is now suffering from like whatever his hip injury was that he tried to play through at age 27. Because Matt Khalil has had continuous knee injuries that he played through all the time to the detriment of the team probably.
Well, then I'm going to link this article in our Skype chat because the last sentence is, and I quote, Beachum impressed teammates and coaches during the second half of the season for fighting through consistent knee pain that forced him to sit out practice every Wednesday.
Holy crap.
So I guess there's your answer.
Thanks, Ryan O'Halloran, for screwing us over. No. But
so I guess we can count on Kelvin Beachum to start for the Vikings next year.
Screw it. I would still. He played better through knee injury than Matt Khalil did.
It'd be hard to play worse.
Like if the options are between the two of them, I'd take Beachum for that amount of money.
Well, okay, then let me ask you a different question. You have apparently been working on like analytical methods to like rate offensive tackles for, I guess, the purpose of free agency.
For the purpose of the draft.
For the purpose of the draft. So maybe not free agency, not the same. Are there any tackles that you have discovered using your like newly designed tool that might be a better fit than Kelvin Beachum?
Turns out a lot. So this is something I've published at coldomaha.com. It's very preliminary. I haven't done back testing on it, which is very, very important. But the reason I was willing enough to publish it is because it's very, very similar to methods that have worked for receivers, running backs, tight ends, to some smaller extent, quarterbacks, linebackers, defensive ends. And so that's, a lot of positions where similar methods have worked out. And it's to take college production, normalize it for offense in some way, and then, normalize it once, or not normalize it for, and then adjust it for age. So normalize it for offense in some way, and then adjust it for age. In this case, I took the ability to prevent pressure, the fundamental pass protection skill of all offensive linemen. I adjusted it against team sack rate. So, for example, Troy, which is a school in Alabama, led the league, the FBS, in sack rate, with only allowing a sack on 1.7% of all sacks. Now, I don't know the reason for a fact why this is true, but I strongly suspect, and I did, I guess, watch enough Antonio Garcia film to figure out, that a lot of it is a result of the offense, not because all 5 offensive linemen are extremely good, but because the offense prevents pressure, much in the same way that we've been talking throughout the year about how changing the offense from a 7-step offense, a 7-step drop offense for the Vikings, to a 3- and 5-step drop offense significantly reduced the pressure on Sam Bradford than Teddy had last year in a 7-step drop offense, and then therefore also helped reduce the sack rate. It's not that the offensive line played better. In fact, they played worse, for the Vikings this year than they did the year before, but they allowed more pressure the year before because of the nature of the offense. It's designed to eliminate pressure. It's the same reason that the Giants, who we just discussed having a bad offensive line, were able to avoid a lot of pressure being given up, is because, especially for the first half of the year, they got rid of the ball quickly. Same thing with Troy. They got rid of the ball really, really quickly. So if all you have are the pressure numbers that an offensive lineman gives up, you don't have enough. And so I ended up, figuring out a way to account for team sack rate, which, of course, the skill of the individual offensive lineman, contributes to. So I didn't want to put too much of a weight on it, but I put a pretty significant weight on it to create a production rating. And then that production rating I ran against age, because younger players are better. Now, I don't know how much better relative to other positions. Younger receivers almost always better in terms of, for the same amount of production in college. So, a lot of people don't like this idea that younger receivers matter more because of, players like Marvin Harrison and Keyshawn Johnson and so on, who were really old coming out of college, like 24 even. But they actually had incredible production, which meant that they beat their age-adjusted production. They had 54% of their team's yards, which is nuts. That's insane. But for a 24-year-old, you kind of need to hit 45% in order for you to be, potential phenom at the position in the NFL. So I did a pretty aggressive adjustment for age, and I found, a couple of offensive linemen that were reputed to be good based on the statistics that they had. Antonio Garcia is the example I'm giving because he was the tackle for Troy, who's not. I mean, he's not bad in terms of the numbers, but he's certainly, I think, overrated in terms of his ability to prevent sacks. He hasn't given up a sack in his 900 most recent pass blocking snaps. That's like a year and a half. That's a lot. To not give a sack up in. But, if you take into account that his offense really helped him do that, then you have to sort of downgrade him in some way. So after all that, I was able to create, some interesting, metrics for offensive linemen. So it doesn't like the Utah guy, Garrett Bowles, because he's going to finish 2017 with 25.6 as his age. So he's going to be over 25 and a half years old. Unsurprisingly, that's really old for a player. It's the oldest out of any of the offensive tackles in the draft, according to CBS. So that's a big issue. But a player like Roderick Johnson, who gave up more pressure than Garrett Bowles in a more difficult to block for offense, grades out much better because he's going to finish his rookie year at 22.1 years old. Which is, more than half a year younger than the rookie average. So he's one of the players that's kind of interesting to look at. So Roderick Johnson at Florida State, who is polarizing. A lot of people just do not like him. In fact, a lot of people call him a turnstile. But when you adjust for age and production, he actually, looks pretty good. And again, I don't know if this is, tried and true for offensive linemen, but it's a similar method that's been used for other players. So I kind of like it. Cam Robinson at Alabama is supposed to be raw and unpolished, and the guy that, is going to take a little bit of time to develop. Ryan Ramczyk is pro-ready. He's the guy from Wisconsin. Cam Robinson from Alabama he's younger, but he's unpolished. And so you'd expect his production numbers to be worse in that he's a guy that mostly wins in the run game, which these production metrics don't measure. Another thing that you kind of have to take into account. But honestly, he is a better production rating than Ryan Ramczyk by a whole standard deviation, by a whole, tier, essentially. He's a tier better in terms of production. So he'll be interesting to look at just because he might be, the first developmental offensive tackle in a while to be drafted in the first round and still be good. We've been seeing a lot of developmental offensive tackles go in the first round and then be bad. Well, he might end up being good because his production hasn't been so bad after adjusting for his offense. So those are the two guys that scored the best. Then you've got guys who are out of the top 150, people like Justin Senior, who scored pretty well. Dan Skipper, who I don't actually like because he's a penalty machine, which these put a minor emphasis on, very minor. But he scored well. And then Taylor Moton from Western Michigan scored well too. And he's a guy that both Luke Inman and I, so Luke over at Cold Omaha, also likes him a lot. Both Luke Inman and I like a lot. And he could be... he's probably, in my eyes, he's actually probably already the third best tackle in the draft if you don't assume that players like Forrest Lamp, who's a tackle at Western Kentucky but will be a guard in the NFL, or Deion Dawkins, who's a tackle at Temple, but will be a guard in the NFL. If you assume that those guys aren't tackles, then I'd say Taylor Moton's the third best tackle. So those are the guys that I've highlighted.
And all can be had for the low, low price of less than Kelvin Beachum.
Yeah, significantly lower. Possibly a first-round pick that costs less than $9 million a year. Probably less than the $4 million it would take to sign him in free agency. And also, if not a first-round pick, then which the Vikings don't have, then a second or a third or a fourth, all of which are way cheaper. And probably less injured.
Indeed. Oh. Okay. Stupid ESPN and their autoplay ads.
Hate it. I hate it.
I know, and this one like found a way to defeat my like anti-autoplay Chrome script. So I used to love the blog firejoemorgan.com. It was a great place to go for like just only takedowns of bad writing. Like bad sports writing in particular.
Yeah. No, it was good.
In honor of Ken Tremendous wrote a Fire Joe Morgan-esque. He was one of the writers for FJM. He wrote a Fire Joe Morgan-esque takedown of a Bill Plaschke column a week or two ago on his Tumblr account, and it made me fond for the old days. And I was like, oh man, I wish media was still as bad as it used to be, so that we could do a takedown or two on Norse code. And luckily, my faith in humanity was both damaged and restored in the last couple of days. So we were able to find a couple of stories that we can take a couple of weed whacker whacks at. The first comes from somebody who I generally admire. We've talked a lot about on this show about the work that Bill Barnwell does, and he's kind of like a trailblazer in the like sports analytics field. He's better on 538 than he is on ESPN. And this article, which we will link to in the show notes, is a pretty strong indication of that. He writes about 5 moves that every team in the NFC North needs to make in the 2017 offseason.
Sounds promising.
He starts out with the Bears. Job number 1, release Jay Cutler. All right.
Cool. Makes sense.
Number 2, franchise Alshon Jeffrey.
I mean, there's reasons to disagree with it, but, you know, the take wouldn't be, you know, interesting if there wasn't, like, some justification behind it or some argument behind it, so go on. Yeah, that makes sense.
By virtue of being tagged for the second time, Jeffrey's salary would rise to $17.5 million in 2017, which would make him the highest paid wide receiver in football for a team that, if job number 1 was followed, has no quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, other than, like, Brian Hoyer.
But I assume he like continues to like he just made the argument against it. I assume he makes the argument for it in a second.
Well, yeah. Point number 3: make a big move at quarterback. Wow, he just makes it sound so easy.
Is it that easy?
But
just do it, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't the Vikings make? Oh, they did. See, I think it was so easy.
Actually, they made 2 big moves. They made a big move 2 years ago, and then another one, a huge move at like the 11th hour when they needed to.
Yeah, so you can just get quarterbacks.
They're just everywhere. Barnwell stumps briefly for Jimmy Garoppolo, but after some ruminating about whether or not Tony Romo or Colin Kaepernick would be good fits, spoiler alert, they're not. He eventually lands on Tyrod Taylor, who the Bills apparently don't love.
I find it so interesting, this whole Tyrod Taylor thing, because like from one perspective, like, it makes no sense that he's a hot name because the team that has him doesn't want him. But from another perspective, he played really well. What the hell is going on? I thought that he played really well.
Dude, if you like DFS or if you're a fantasy guy, then Tyrod Taylor's your boy.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was great for me in DFS. He also, I thought he played well. I guess one of the things that the Bills had a problem with was that he, and this is like third-hand stuff, so this is not as rock solid of information. But one of the things they didn't like is that he played outside of the structure of his offense too often, which, big deal, it worked. That's my approach to that. Like, I don't like quarterbacks who improvise and lose, but if you improvise and win, you're better than a guy who always plays within the structure of his offense. The hot take, I know, but
so really, what point number 3 should have been is find Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady.
Right? Yeah. Get a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
Just get somebody who's like really freakishly good at throwing the ball into tight windows that can improvise and read defenses really well.
Yeah, just get yourself some Tommy.
Sounds like a street name for like heroin or something.
It does.
Gotta get yourself some Tommy.
All right, so what's point 4?
Upgrade at cornerback. All right.
Cool. That's easy.
Number 5, upgrade at safety too. So
also easy. Super easy. It's not like the Vikings have been trying to do it for 6 years.
Well, just you wait. If only the Bears could beat the Lions. The number 1 goal for the Lions should be to work out an extension for Matthew Stafford.
See, okay, so this is exactly like the kind of thing that I want in that article. I think that that's a smart, I'm not going to say it's nuanced because it's one sentence, but it's a step that makes sense that has details in it.
Okay, but this is the opposite of nuance. Like, the Lions are not letting Matthew Stafford go anywhere. And
right, but it's like an off-season checklist, right? So long as it's not 5 things that are exactly that, I'm fine with that. Does he put numbers in the subheader? Does he give what he thinks the numbers should be? Because if he doesn't, then yeah, you're right, it's useless. But if he does,
the Lions aren't letting Stafford go anywhere, but as their longtime quarterback enters the final year of his deal, general manager Bob Quinn will probably want to sign Stafford to his extension now and not have to worry about the possibility of franchising him in 2018. Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Oh, well, never mind. He doesn't give numbers.
He does for the next one, which is equally self-evident. Try to work out a deal with Ziggy Ansah.
No way. Really? The young, almost star pass rusher? That guy?
There are a few reasons to sign Ansah right now.
Is that literally the word for word what the thing says in the article?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
There's some stuff about the franchise tag becoming more expensive if they don't work out a deal with him. And then, for comparison, Barnwell writes about Olivier Vernon, a less productive pass rusher, raking in $53 million over the first 3 years of a new deal with the Giants when he hit unrestricted free agency. So obviously the same thing would happen to Ansah.
Yeah. Why couldn't he just use the in-division example of Everson Griffin? I feel like that makes more sense because it was done before free agency and it turned out to be a cheap deal instead of an expensive one.
Well, that doesn't fit in with the narrative that the Lions need to do this now so that Ansah doesn't get paid like Vernon.
All right, what's next on the Lions list?
Figure out the right side of the offensive line.
Just figure it out? Just
figure it out. Well, and he talks about how Larry Warford and Riley Reif are approaching free agency. Basically, it's like lock down your free agents. And also pursue Kendall Wright in free agency.
Extend, lock down.
Yes. Pursue Kendall Wright in free agency is number 4, and find some help across from Ansah is number 5.
So it's just a long needs article.
Yes. The Packers apparently need to, number 1, re-sign Jared Cook and TJ Lang.
Did they really need to re-sign Jared Cook? I disagree with Jared Cook.
Justice Mosqueda, I think, would agree with you and not Bill Barnwell in this case. Number 2, bring back Julius Peppers, but pass on Nick Perry. Again, thank you, Captain Obvious. This all assumes that Peppers isn't retiring.
Yeah, I keep the good players, get rid of the bad ones. Solid.
Wow, that sounds like a winning strategy to me. Number 3, address the cornerback position.
That's nice and vague.
Yeah, and
how does he say how? Or is it most of it just like a listing of the fact that they need a corner?
Yeah, he mentions Devon House, but the only number in the paragraph is the number 15 in reference to James Shields missing 15 games with a concussion.
Oh.
Number 4, shore up inside linebacker. And number 5, add a starting running back, and give serious thought to signing Adrian Peterson.
I would love it if they did that.
Oh, dude, it would be a reverse Brett Favre in all good ways. Like, not only did we get Brett Favre for like his possibly best season ever, but we get to stick the Packers with Adrian Peterson for what is likely to be Peterson's most underwhelming season ever after like a series of increasingly less whelming seasons.
The seasons grew less and less whelming as time went on. I would. So here's my favorite thing about this is decent chance that there's a Week 17 matchup between the Packers and the Vikings. Decent chance that game is meaningful, assuming that the Vikings just pull a Barnwell and just fix the offensive line. If that's the case, then Adrian Peterson will have a revenge game against the Vikings. And who knows, maybe he goes off for 190 yards. But the thing I like the most about this is that Peterson is likely to fumble the ball on his last carry and ensure a Vikings victory.
That would taste better than literally any like single piece of chocolate or like fancy cheese. Literally anything you could eat or drink. Just like eating that through my eyes would be the most delicious thing that could ever happen.
Right? It's amazing.
But
like, think about this. Like, how happy were Packers fans watching the 2009 NFC Championship game afterwards, right? Because watching it, you're pretty upset, right? Brett Favre was doing really well. He was throwing a good ball. Vikings winning.
Oh, but dude, we all knew what was going to happen on that last drive. Like, Packers fans knew better than anyone. They were like, oh, y'all are going down.
And they were happy, right? And especially when it happened. And it turned from like, maybe not misery, but like resignation to joy. And I feel like that might be the sweetest joy of all. Like, it's not the gradually building joy of seeing an enemy destroy themselves, the gradually building joy of having like a lockdown victory. It's the flip of the switch that occurs at a turnover when the player that you loved the most is now playing for the team you hate the most, is doing well, and then loses the game for that team.
And then a beautiful red zone fumble that leads to a Vikings playoff win. That would be the most beautiful gift that Adrian Peterson could give the Vikings.
Just amazing.
But this is I teased this as a media takedown article, and Barnwell's usually pretty good about this, and I get it. Writers got to eat, so they'll sometimes like write stuff just to like fill in words and finish an article. Not that you would ever do that. I don't know that you have ever necessarily done this, but I definitely caught Barnwell doing it, because while he's like going on with this ludicrous point, he writes, Peterson could fit. The Packers have gone after free agents when they're transcendent Hall of Fame caliber players who are undervalued for a given reason at a certain point in their career.
Or LaTroy Guion.
Like Julius Peppers and Charles Woodson, or LaTroy Guion. Peterson fits in that group. The very next paragraph starts, the Packers wouldn't pay top dollar for Peterson, but it's tough to see his market really attracting a ton of interest.
That's astounding. That you could put those two pieces together. Charles Woodson? Like Adrian Peterson, who we don't even like. Like what?
He's really good. He's undervalued. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player, but nobody really wants him.
Yeah, I mean that proves the point that he's undervalued, right? If nobody wants him, then he must necessarily.
Okay, but you need two people to make those points. Like, like you can't.
No, but how great would that article be if you just added like ... proving how undervalued he will be?
It would actually make a lot more sense. I probably would have just like passed over it without even like my brain would not have choked on that. Like it did when I read it. I was like, wow, that is some remarkable like cognitive dissonance, like mental gymnastics.
I love it.
So finally, Bill Barnwell has some thoughts on what the Vikings need to do.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, many of them are appropriately vague. Number one, restructure Adrian Peterson's deal or release him. That sentence could be...
Wait, no. What?
That sentence could be cut down to 2 words.
But like, okay, obviously I'm not disagreeing with the argument because, duh, I agree with the argument. But you can't like make the argument that the Packers must sign Adrian Peterson. He fits the profile. Hall of Fame quality player, will be undervalued. Next sentence, Vikings need to get rid of this fucking dude.
Well, yeah, well, and I mean, okay, he does go into like why. I mean, the $18 million that he's due in 2017 is a compelling argument. It makes it very simple.
Right. Well, yeah, no, $18 million, bad. Does he, so restructure is one of the words there, right? So like, does he give an alternate number that would make sense as a restructure?
The other options the Vikings give Peterson, I'm quoting here, a pay cut by means of an extension, which would guarantee him something in that $7 million range in 2017, while giving the Vikings an opportunity to keep Peterson at a palatable figure with little or no guaranteed money in 2018. I think we literally just talked about how $7 million is more than twice what Peterson is probably worth on the market.
Yeah. I don't really get, like, why would you pay Adrian Peterson as if he's one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL? Like, because do people not understand what the running back market is? Like, they're so blinded by, like, the fact that Adrian Peterson has this $18 million deal that they assume that, like, $7 million is, like, a reasonable amount for a whatever running back, because,
there's no way he can only be worth half of his contract. There's no way he can be worth like 15% of his contract, right? That's lunacy.
So the last time I looked at contract values was actually a while ago. So maybe LaShawn McCoy's is not $8.7 million. Oh my God, it's not. It's actually $8 million. It's actually less. So yeah, so the highest averaging contract among running backs in the NFL is LaShawn McCoy. I mean, aside from Adrian Peterson's, on average. So it doesn't include this year, but just on average. He is $8 million. The next two are $7.3 and $7.1 million. So that would mean Adrian Peterson should be the 4th highest paid running back in the NFL, is the argument that Bill Barnwell is making. $7 million.
Well, he should be that, but he should be that for the Packers. I don't know what kind of game he's like. I feel like he's playing chess while we're playing dice. Like, I don't know what his end game looks like, but it's pretty weird. His second thing that the Vikings should do is to let many of the free agents leave. This strikes me as disastrous.
Like many of them? Like, okay, like, well, okay, so which free agents should the Vikings just let go?
Well, quoting again, the Vikings had one of the deepest rosters in football, but many of those players either took a step backward or failed to deliver on expectations in 2016. The Vikings can get by at cornerback without Terrence Newman and Captain Munnerlyn.
Holy crap! Really?
Excuse me?
The two 3 starters?
We don't need Terrence Newman. What has he ever done for us?
That's astounding. I kind of want to know what Barnwell's internal logic is, because I assume he doesn't like... The way he says that makes it kind of imply that he's not going to keep going in terms of like his argument behind it. But like,
I mean, I get maybe like not being that enthusiastic about Captain, you know, we've been kind of back and forth on the fence, but I think we both like agreed pretty consistently throughout all the up and downs of the 2016 season that Terrence Newman was a crucial part of the backfield.
They might think that this is interesting. So Barnwell might be of the mind that Captain Munnerlyn is due another multi-year contract, because this is going to be his last multi-year contract because of his age, and that Terrence Newman is just bound to fall off a cliff regardless, because he's going to be 39.
Because he old.
Yeah. So if that's the understanding, then I still don't get it, because like you'd have to make the argument that Mackenzie Alexander can fill in for Captain Munnerlyn now, which I don't think you can make that argument. And again, I was a huge fan of Mackenzie Alexander. I love the pick. You'd also have to make the argument, of course, that Trey Waynes can fill in now. So Trey Waynes cannot do the slot stuff, so you can't get an outside corner and have Trey Waynes kick inside, because like that's something the Vikings tried for like 2 weeks and decided, like 2 weeks in the summer, and just decided,
and
wow, this is never
immediately knew that no, and like the softness at slot has been kind of an ongoing issue, and getting rid of the two people who like protected the slot, you know, who were not like Josh Robinson and Trey Waynes, like That seems, I guess, counterintuitive to me.
Right. So you get rid of your slot guy to bring in the guy that no one thinks is ready, Mackenzie Alexander. And then you get rid of the outside guy that occasionally can play slot and did occasionally play slot. To get a guy who not only can't play the slot, but who on the outside though he has improved since his rookie year, has played like garbage. And he's shown more improvement than the guy I like, Mackenzie Alexander.
He's slightly less stinky garbage. He's like paper trash. He's not like food trash.
Right, exactly. Like you throw it in from afar because you know if you miss, it's not a big deal.
Is that zero splatter?
Zero splatter trash.
I think we just have an episode title.
Yeah, that's good. By the way, I just looked up the 2017 total cash. LaShawn McCoy's contract actually was de-escalating. So $7 million would actually make him the highest paid running back in 2017.
Wow.
That's astounding. That's beautiful.
That's bad news for poor Adrian. Good news for the league.
It is.
Barnwell returns to earth for a moment to write, "The Matt Khalil dream is dead after years of injuries at left tackle." All right. And Andre Smith was a mess after his well-intentioned signing before the season. That was probably the one signing that I was so excited about that really just fell on its face. And that was very frustrating to watch for me personally. I was excited about the Smith signing, and it really did not pan out.
What would have been interesting is if Smith had actually played well before his injury too, because then you would have been like, no, but I was right. But no, you weren't even that.
No,
I was bad, and then he got hurt.
I was just wrong, just straight up wrong. But what could we have done? It seemed like the best move at the time, you know?
Yeah, it seemed like a fine move at the time, and I argued that both Lodeholt and Smith were fine to have on the roster at once, provided that one of them wins a competition. Because statistically, right, if you've got two people who have a wide range of outcomes, which I think was true for both Lodeholt and Smith.
But okay, but then, dude, if you look at it writ large, all the people that played at offensive line had a rainbow prism of outcomes.
Right, except for Khalil.
No, but the outcomes generally resembled Khalil's. Everybody sucked and got hurt.
Yeah, right. but going in, you're right. There was a large range of outcomes, but the thing I was hoping was that you have two people competing for the same position with a large range of outcomes, and one of them wins a competition, then there is a very good chance that you've gotten an acceptable player. Because that's all you need, right? You don't need the best player at right tackle, which actually both of them have been at one point in the NFL, which is why there's such a wide range of outcomes. But you just need a guy who, not even average, just below average would have been fine. And if you have two of them competing within that wide range of outcomes and one of them wins, really good chance you're going to get at least a below average guy. And then Lodeholt just retired because he got hurt again, which that makes sense. And then you just had Andre Smith, who had a wide range of outcomes, explored the depths of them, and then got hurt.
Well, yeah, and we should have ended up basically with two below average guys, and somehow we ended up with zero. It was so rude. Barnwell also includes Rhett Ellison, who we should probably re-sign. Rhett Ellison is, as Barnwell writes, a useful blocking tight end.
So does Barnwell think that we shouldn't?
No, he thinks that we should.
Okay. So to his credit.
Yeah. And also Jeff Locke.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
He had the one good year, which was the most recent year.
This is a remarkable hedge. I think Barnwell kind of realizes that he's writing a bullcrap article here, because he's and punter Jeff Locke has been part of a unit that has been above average in each of his 4 years with the team.
Oh, wow.
This is really just and sports writing like this is not that uncommon, but to see somebody who I thought was so generally great just write such a stinker, maybe he just doesn't care about the NFC North. Most people don't. I don't necessarily blame him for that. But then he's Cordero Patterson has been an excellent kick returner, but the Vikings may be blown out of his market if another team values him as a starting wide receiver. What team is going to value Cordero Patterson as a starting wide receiver?
We did have this discussion earlier in the offseason when we were well, what if one team thinks of him like the Rams thought of Tavon Austin, and suddenly he has a ton of money for no clearly discernible reason? But then we kind of dismissed it.
It's not happening. Back into the depths of cognitive dissonance. Point number 3, extend quarterback Sam Bradford. Sentence number 1, the Vikings probably wasted a first-round pick by trying to salvage their 2016 season with Bradford, but it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. And then he links back to his own article where he was like, we should not have traded for Sam Bradford. Which was, this is like, that was like a post, like, because he wrote an article that the Vikings clearly lost the Sam Bradford trade like 10 or 12 weeks into the season. That article is like an existing, like living example of the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy.
Yeah.
And he links to it in this article, which is some like, that was not his best work. This is somehow worse.
Did he, wait, so when he linked to it, did he say I was wrong, or what's the method of linking to it? Does he admit that he was wrong first?
In the sentence, the Vikings probably wasted a first-round pick. The phrase wasted a first-round pick is highlighted and linked and goes to the other article.
Oh. But then he says it wasn't Bradford's fault?
Yeah, he goes on to write, Bradford produced his best season as a pro behind a dismal offensive line, signed for 2017 at a salary of $18 million, but set to hit unrestricted free agency after this season. Hard to know what to do.
This is insane. He's been like the king of like process, not outcome. He's been so big on this. Like he gets so angry. This is perfect. He gets so angry when a coach correctly goes for it on fourth down, it doesn't work, and then someone says, well, you shouldn't have gone for it. He gets so angry at that kind of analysis where if somebody engages in outcome-oriented analysis for something that from a process perspective was a really good idea, like going for 2 or going for it on fourth down, like they say, well, it didn't work, so they shouldn't have done it. Like he gets so angry at that. But like this, it's like literally this.
So my best guess at his argument is that the Vikings were wrong to trade for Bradford, but because we're still not sure about Teddy's health, we need to extend Sam Bradford because we might be able to save a few bucks on his 2018 contract if we do.
I mean,
so now we're not just like post hoc ergo propter hoc. We're into like the sunk cost fallacy too, right?
Sort of. Like there's like a way to navigate this out, right? Which is actually to make the opposite of the sunk cost argument. It's like, well, now he's on your roster, he can't get that first round pick back. And you might as well. Like, I think that's the best argument you can make is that you might as well. And like, you shouldn't say, well, we've invested so much in him, we should do it. So if you say, this is the roster as it stands now, we can't, like, we have to get rid of all the stuff that got us here and evaluate what's going to get us forward. With that in mind, Bradford's on the roster. He gives us a chance to win, and we can't get another better quarterback. So, extend him. Like, so from that perspective, you can hold both thoughts, right? That he's not worth a first-round pick. But that's actually really tough because, like, a quarterback that can help you win is always worth a first-round pick. Well,
and that's basically the argument he made. Well, and he screwed himself by making the argument that Bradford was a bad trade in the first place. Because if he had just not like... I can't think
of a single quarterback who is worth extending as a starter that isn't worth, like, a first-round pick, because all the quarterbacks that are not worth extending as a starter, and I've seen quarterbacks extended that I don't think should have been, so I'm not saying every quarterback is worth a first-round pick. But if he's worth extending as your starter, he's a first-round pick.
Then
right?
he's worth that pick. Like, just by, like, functionally by definition. Like, there is no calculation of value where you can be one and not the other.
Right, and also to clear up people who might be confused by my stance, I was wrong about the Sam Bradford trade, so I'm totally okay with disagreeing with what I said earlier. Barnwell, not so much.
Wow. The mental gymnastics in order to write these 2 paragraphs.
You just got to admit you're wrong. It's so easy. Just admit that you were wrong, and now you don't have to do the thing.
Yeah, but Ben Albright does it all the time, and it actually gives him a lot of license to, like, be mad on the internet.
It's true. He uses the fact that he admits that he's wrong as a weapon. It's enjoyable.
It is fun to watch. It's very like Michael Jackson popcorn gif. I enjoy his tweet storms. Okay, so get this. Bill Barnwell has a very simple fix for the Vikings in his 4th thing that they need to do.
Okay.
Fix the offensive line.
Cool. Done. I'm on board. Check.
Wow. Is that all? That's what we need to do, is just fix the offensive line? Wow.
Just fix it. Yeah, just sign the dude, sign the other dude, and then get the third guy.
Man, sports writing is hard.
I'm just thinking about Barnwell's career and what led him to this point.
Deadlines. That's always...
It has to be, right?
Yeah.
Because he was doing such, like, insightful stuff for Football Outsiders. Again, the more I get involved in, like, data and statistics and analysis, the more I kind of realize the way that Barnwell handles numbers is a little bit too cavalier for my taste, and that I actually end up disagreeing with a lot of what he wrote then that I used to agree with. But, like, he wrote a bunch of insightful stuff, especially for Football Outsiders, where, like...
It's hard to, like, ignore the meta impact that his work had on people like you, specifically.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And your, like, generation of writers.
Brian Burke, and, like, a lot of these database writers that were early, like Aaron Schatz, like, they had a huge impact on people like me. And now it's just like, yeah, one of the things the Vikings got to do next year is fix their offensive line. Cool, that's my article next.
Next, lock up cornerback Xavier Rhodes. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, but if you have Xavier Rhodes, then you don't need Terrence Newman or Captain Munnerlyn, apparently.
Yeah, because you got a cornerback, and then not a need now.
Not just a cornerback, but I think what we can all agree, like you and me and Barnwell, is probably the best cornerback in the league.
You think Xavier Rhodes is the best cornerback in the league?
I mean, if you look at how poorly the receivers he covers performed and how poorly quarterbacks perform when he's on the field, I mean, I think there's a relatively compelling argument to be made.
I think there's a statistical case that Xavier Rhodes is the best cornerback in the league, but I don't think that there's a good case, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, okay, and that's the other thing, is that when he talks about locking up Xavier Rhodes, he conveniently neglects to mention Rhodes' ability to make, like, really, like... we talked about win probability graphs. Rhodes is really good at making mistakes that can really influence that graph.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's really good, actually. I like that. The way to phrase that, I like that. Yeah, and again, he's a Pro Bowl quality cornerback, and he definitely played like that this year, regardless of what Pro Football Focus has to say, because that's weird.
Regardless of how many, like, super annoying, expensive penalties he drew, regardless of how many, like, crucial misses he had, he's still pretty great. And I want to lock him up.
I mean, like,
don't get me wrong, I want to lock him up too.
Yeah, I wrote this down somewhere too. But he held, like, number one receivers, which there was a slate of them, right? I mean, like, yeah, okay, Kelvin Benjamin didn't end up being good this year because, who could have seen that coming? Me, because I hate him. But... like Odell Beckham and like just this slate of like Des Bryant, this slate of really good receivers that he covered this year, held them to like 600 some yards over the course of the season. And if you have like Odell Beckham on your team or Mike Evans or AJ Green or whatever, right? If you've got like this number one guy that you want to pay like $12 million a year when they hit free agency, like that kind of guy, and they get 700 yards for the season, you are upset. You are angry. You are as angry as Vikings fans were at Michael Jenkins. And he didn't even get $12 million a year.
Revis
Island. It was
Island.
Just Michael Jenkins. I don't know why people expected more.
More like Rhodes Islands, which is actually a much better like moniker, which nobody even gave him.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
Ugh. Well,
I maybe people were too annoyed at the island thing because Revis wasn't the only one who, for himself, established an island, right? Because there was Revis Island, and then I think they never gave it to Sherman, but somebody said Hayden Island, which was dumb because by the time Revis Island became a thing, Hayden had fallen off. There's a Peterson Island for Patrick Peterson. There's a Peters Island for Marcus Peters. Like maybe it became too played out that nobody wanted to go with the Rhodes Island, which is amazing.
It should be Rhodes Islands.
Why plural? Because the Rhodes is plural?
Yeah.
No, I like Rhodes Island. I think it's funnier that way. I like it.
Okay. Either way, let's make that a thing next year when the Vikings execute on at least that one executable piece of Barnwell's dumb 5-point plan. It's not the dumbest thing.
My head read that as like a 5-year plan, and I was like, Barnwell's designing economic policy for the Soviet Union?
Exactly, and the production numbers will all be fake. It's not the dumbest story that I read today about the Vikings. No, that honor goes to Matthew Collar. Oh, no.
No, we like Matthew Collar.
I know, you work with this guy, but dude, this article is garbage. From the clickbaity headline to the just like scurrilous like rumor that it's based on. Okay. Headline. Adam Thielen's status could throw a wrench in Vikings free agency plans.
His status as a restricted free agent?
Well, yeah, and like this is like bad headline writing 101. Like when you suggest a possible, like when you concern troll in the headline, when you suggest a possible harm from a like nebulous thing, like you're writing clickbait at that point. And maybe Collie didn't write the headline. I imagine you guys don't get to write your own headlines. That's fine. But let's look at the substance of the article. Like Chris Hogan, I'm paraphrasing, sort of quoting here. Like Chris Hogan in 2016, Adam Thielen is a restricted free agent. Cap room isn't thought to be a big problem for Minnesota. Releasing Adrian Peterson would help a lot. But here's where it could get hairy. And note the specific use of hedge words. Omar Kelly of the Sun Sentinel reports that Dolphins receiver Kenny Stills, who caught 42 passes for 726 yards last year, is seeking, not that he has, but he is seeking, a 5-year contract worth $30 million in free agency. By that measure, based entirely on innuendo and conjecture, a potential offer sheet, not an actual offer sheet, but one based purely on conjecture that the author himself has, given to us, a potential offer sheet for Thielen after his 69-catch, 976-yard season would be enormous. Not specifically enormous, no numbers, but given these things that might happen, another thing that might happen would be huge, huge.
I like Matthew Collar.
I do too, but this is bad reportage.
I'll
buy him a beer if I see him. I feel bad for just like shooting down your homie, but dude.
I disagree with the premise of his article. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go that far. I'm going to be that bold. No, I think that there's a lot of issues with the article. So one of the things, the only example that we really have of this happening in recent history is Chris Hogan, which he isolates at the top of the article.
Yeah, that's basically he uses the Chris Hogan example to extrapolate a series of things about why Adam Thielen might demand like too much money from the Vikings.
Right, and so there's a couple of things that like need to happen for this to be a risk, and I think that the succession of those multiple things all happening at once make it unlikely that this is an actual problem. But before I get into those problems, which are actually kind of outlined in the article at the very bottom, which I feel like he needs to go into a little bit more detail for. One thing needs to be mentioned: the vast, vast, vast majority of restricted free agents, including ones that perform at a high level, do not get their offer sheets taken away or not matched, essentially, by teams. And so in order to like get that clear, so restricted free agents, if they are offered the lowest tender possible, can be given a particular contract, and then another team can offer any contract they want. So essentially like a free agent. And then the first team has the right of first refusal. So if they match that contract, the player doesn't get any choice. He has to be with the original team. Even if he wants to beat that other team because of taxes, because he'll get more money that way, or because of like the weather, or because of the teammates, or like winning proclivity, or coaching change, whatever reason that he might want to give, he can't. He has to be with the original team. That's why it's a restricted free agency, and that's only if it's like the bottom level tender. So that's this, and even in those situations where teams offer an original round tender below the second round, which is what Adam Thielen would be because it's below the second round. There are really high performing players that don't get away from their team. It's the reason Chris Hogan got brought up is because he's kind of the only example of this happening in the past several years. And there's dozens of restricted free agents who perform at a high level. Because just think of any undrafted free agent that performed well, like in their first contract. They get that restricted free agent offer. They often get an original round tender. They often stick with their original team. The Bills were in a space where they had such little cap space that an increase in cap space of $2.5 million made it impossible for them to match. So here's the things that need to happen for that to play out. One, the Vikings need to offer an original round tender. So there's three kinds of restricted free agent tenders you can offer. A first round tender, a second round tender, and an original round tender. And an original round tender means essentially if you're undrafted, it doesn't mean anything. They can just match. If you're not undrafted, then kind of like the first round tender and the second round tender, you get compensation if the player is signed away. So if it's a first round tender, you offer a certain amount of money with that tender, and then a team offers more money. You can either match and keep that player, or you can let the team take them, but that team now has to give you a first round pick. So that's what a first round tender is. Second round tender, same thing, but a second round pick. Original round tender, same thing, but the original round that player was drafted in this case, undrafted, so no rounds. So that's like, so the Vikings have to offer that third $1.6 million or $1.7 million contract for 1 year. That's all that does. Then then another team has to offer Thielen a contract that would be so burdensome to the Vikings that they couldn't possibly match, but would still be a good idea for that team.
Okay, so are there, like, have you heard of any other team that's like that excited about Adam Thielen? I mean, to Matthew's credit, God bless you, he writes a very like concise and useful, like 200 words at the end of the article about that basically, details the tender rules and the prices. But he also mentions like Sam Bradford's undeniable chemistry with Adam Thielen and provides a GIF as video evidence. Do you think there's any other team that is like that excited about Adam Thielen? I mean, the Vikings have a lot of reasons to be excited about this guy. He and Bradford clearly work together well.
Yeah, and I think that other teams will probably undervalue him relative to what the Vikings do. So I don't think that they're going to offer any sheet that is going to be worse than what the Vikings want to pay him anyway. So I think that
the Chris Hogan situation is like a massive outlier as far as like Thielen's actual contract is concerned, right?
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. And, one of them is that it's just rare that it happens to undrafted free agents. But another reason is that I think Thielen is just not well regarded by the league. Like, remember, and granted, this happened before
he wasn't that well
season.
Regarded by us before this season.
I mean, we liked him.
But none
of us thought he'd be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. You're right.
No one thought he was going to do that.
But like, remember before the season when the Vikings had that practice with Cincinnati, and none of the corners that were starters wanted to cover him. They like refused to, and like that became a story, right? They were like, we don't want to waste our time on this guy. Like, do you remember that?
Only now that you mentioned it. I would not. Yeah. That is a piece of my recognition memory and not my recall memory.
Yeah, which I think is a great story in terms of like here's like the journey that this undrafted free agent went on. It's getting super rude though, Jesus. But
right.
But like, yeah, like teams just don't regard him that well. And again, he did just have a 1,000-yard season, so it is like a lot different, the landscape for him. But like, he just wasn't on anyone's radar. I doubt one season is going to put him on the radar in a way that other teams will be like, oh yeah, we definitely want him. We want him for more than like $4 million a year or whatever. So yeah, it
you know what's going to happen is that he's going to be with the Vikings for like one more year, and then the Patriots are going to scoop him up for probably less than he's worth, and he's going to have like 3 crazy seasons with Tom Brady, the ageless wonder. Like,
Man, you were so jaded about the Patriots. Like, here's the thing I like. Now it's the Patriots thing.
Okay, but you can't deny that Adam Thielen has all of the characteristics that Tom Brady can't get enough of. Like if it wasn't for Julian Edelman, the Patriots probably wouldn't have won that Super Bowl.
It wouldn't have gone to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. And Adam Thielen, to me, and Julian Edelman have a lot of the same traits and kind of a similar skill set.
I was going to disagree with you because I'm going to be like, nah, you're biased because they're white. But, I mean, actually, yeah. So, like, here's the thing. Julian is not like Danny Amendola, Wes Welker, or Chris Hogan, other white wide receivers that have played for the Patriots. So, of those white wide receivers, Thielen is definitely by far the closest to Edelman.
Is the most like Edelman, yeah. And Amendola is like a different kind of player. You know, he's like halfway between like Gronk and Edelman. But like I see the way the two of them play, and it, you know, I don't have the same practiced eye as like literally everyone else that's on this show except for maybe James. But
okay, so out of all of them, and this is not necessarily fair to Hogan, but out of like the 5 of these receivers, Thielen is actually probably the most athletic. And Hogan is a really weird case because he was a fullback coming out of Monmouth. And as an undrafted free agent, he got converted to tight end. And then the Patriots converted him. I believe it was the Patriots and not the Bills, but maybe the Bills did it. Converted him from tight end to wide receiver. So he had a really weird path. But for a fullback, he was crazy athletic. In fact, for a tight end, he was quite athletic. But his athleticism is the type where you're like, wow, that dude can really move for a 240-pound guy. And Thielen's athleticism is like, oh, he runs a 4.4. Like it's different, right?
He's not fast for a given trait.
Exactly.
He's just fast.
Yeah, he's just fast. He's super quick. Like his 3-cone time was like 6.79 or something stupid. Just crazy quick, pretty fast. He's got a pretty good vert, not like amazing, but pretty good, like above average. And he's got a pretty good broad. So he's explosive as well.
Yeah, and he's willing to
Edelman
fight for a ball as it comes down.
Very athletic. Like he was converted from quarterback to wide receiver for a reason. And you know, I think Thielen is maybe a little bit taller than Edelman, but like of the guys, you know, Edelman's like the tallest of the Patriots guys, right? So from a body type perspective, like Edelman and Thielen are pretty similar. They both use double moves in the same way. I would say the reason I don't like the comparison too much is just because Edelman's a better route runner by kind of a bit. The thing is, Thielen knows his landmark, so he knows where he needs to be. So, like, that's kind of all you need for a Patriots dude. So, like, that's the reason, like, Ocho Cinco / Johnson, whatever you want to call him, didn't work out is because he didn't know where he needed to be.
Well, and dude, how good would Thielen be if he was catching passes from Tom Brady? He was pretty freaking good catching passes from Sam Bradford.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think
there's that big of a difference.
No, I think he stays in Minnesota.
No.
I will say, so what's weird is that, like, I don't think that the Vikings will give him the $3.8 million that a first-round tender requires, even though I think it's a good deal. I think that, like, paying Adam Thielen 1 year, $3.8 million, I think that's great.
That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, like, it's a 1-year prove-it contract. You had 1,000 yards last season. Prove that you can do it again. We'll sign you. Doesn't even have to be at the end of the season. We'll sign you maybe partway through the season to a long-term contract. Because, like, if you could do this for a season and a half, you could probably do it for 4 seasons. Like, that's all you need, right? But, like, teams don't, like, do this. Like, Tashawn Gibson, I think, is a good example, where the Browns offered a second-round tender. He's a free safety. He was one of the top free safeties that year in the Browns system in the league. And they offered him like a second-round tender, and I was like, you know, the Vikings should trade a second-round pick to get him. They should give him an offer sheet, and trade a second-round pick to get him, put him next to, you know, Harrison Smith, and that'd be great. And they didn't, and no team did that. And I was really like surprised because, like, would you trade a second-round pick for one of the top safeties in the league? Like, yes, you would. So I don't know why no team did it. It turns out Tashawn Gibson wasn't that great in Jacksonville. Still, you know, not bad, actually. But like, it was kind of weird to me. And like, just generally speaking, like teams don't seem to actually activate second or first round tenders. I still would give him a first round tender because it's only $3.8 million. You're saving like $1 million, like almost exactly, I think, versus a second round tender where a team probably won't, might think of trading a second round pick for a guy who got 1,000 yards last year. Like, who knows? Like, I mean, you could just look at the deals that one-hit wonders like Laurent Robinson and Cecil Shorts got in their contract years. Like, teams want these guys that only produce for 1 year. So it seems like they might trade a second-round pick, but they probably won't. So I would give them a first-round tender, but, like, I could see the Vikings offering an original round tender or a second-round tender and being, like, kind of uncomfortable while that plays out.
Yeah, and I mean, my cynicism is based on like the Vikings undervaluing Thielen and the Patriots doing that thing that they frequently do where they just like scoop up undervalued players either in the draft or in free agency or by way of trade. So,
yeah. Oh, actually, we were just talking about Kenny Stills. He's a really good example of the one-hit wonder. He had 900 yards in 2014, and then he ends up getting like no, he ended up getting traded. The Dolphins traded for him, which that's kind of the same thing.
It is kind of the same thing. Well, I frankly want Adam Thielen to stick around for a few more years. If he's going to be a one-hit wonder, I want him to be our one-hit wonder because...
Agreed. The only issue with Adam Thielen being a one-hit wonder is that if he falls off next year, no one's going to blame him for it because he's such like a big like fan favorite. And then every time the Vikings add a receiver or play a receiver above him, regardless of how much more talented that dude is, there's always going to be those fans that are going to be like, Adam Thielen would have done it better. He's on the roster. Why don't you give the kid some playing time?
Exactly. Why don't you give the hometown boy some playing time?
Kenny Stills was traded for a linebacker and a third-round pick. A pretty decent linebacker at the time, Daniel Ellerbe. That is weird.
He is he
got 900 yards.
I'm not going to come out here and say he's deserving of a 30 for 30. But all right, our victory lap / comeback episode is already going to run long, and we've got actually a pretty cool mailbag. Should we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Eric Thompson writes in with a pretty fun question. If you were to quote-unquote Bermanize one player from the Combine, which would you pick? For context, he will get us started. Texas A&M quarterback Trevor, quote, one of these nights.
Oh, I mean, like Taco Charlton, right?
God damn it!
What? Was that your guy?
Yes! Okay, what was
Tacos are only 99 cents at Taco Bell Charlton.
I was going to go with Taco Man Charlton.
I shouldn't.
Actually, no. You know what?
I should say tacos are only 99 cents at the Bell Charlton. All
right. Well, I did have a second one lined up, although it's get out of my head.
I mean, that was easy. That's like, okay, so what's yours?
Chunky Peanut Butter Clements from Illinois.
Man, I wish I had thought about this just a little bit. Give me like one more second. I think I can come up with another one. Because like,
I can't believe you fucking picked Taco Charlton.
Oh, God, why can't you believe that? It's the easiest one.
That's why I wanted it. I figured I expected you to be more Arif.
Okay, well, how about this? Okay. This is in between the easiness of Taco Charlton and chunky how difficult-ish it is in some years. I've got two, actually. Malik, you have to bury that hooker. And Jabril, my eggs need more peppers.
Wait, what was the second one again?
Jabril, My eggs need more
We
peppers.
need more peppers.
Yeah.
Eh.
What? You don't like that one?
Yeah,
Well, okay. Well, it's, I mean, peppers
of
is
all
like,
of them, I think that's my least favorite.
okay.
But
Also, I like calling Mitch Trubisky Mitsubishi, but that's not Bermanizing. It's just his name smashed together, said really fast.
no, that was good.
Reuben Bananas Foster. Look at that. That's great.
This Reuben is bananas. Bananas.
There's a lot of ways you could go with Reuben Foster. So you could go Reuben Bananas Foster. Damn it. Wow.
There's only one way Arif can go with it, though.
Yeah.
It turns
Or
out.
Reuben on Rye Foster. Like, it's like there's two different... Crap, I'm getting too into this. We have to go to the next question.
Okay. Kyle Segal returns from, I guess, being married to a waitress in Florida.
Oh, he's back. Tacklerist Mount McKinley. Stop it.
Actually, maybe don't stop. Well, so Kyle returns to both shit up our mentions and I guess I pulled a couple of questions out. When eating clean, what spices make egg whites less hateable?
Well, you could answer this better than I could, but also David the Killing Njoku.
That's maybe not as good.
What? That's great.
It's clever, but my barometer is kind of chunky peanut butter, and I would put that one below.
Oh my god. Well, okay, where would you put? This is like the bottom barrel. You are not a creative person, but I'm doing it anyway. Forest I Love Lamp. Where'd you put that?
Above, or maybe equal.
Okay.
I actually, when we were talking about him earlier, I almost made the joke, but I figured I'd let the mailbag.
Desmond fit for a king? Sorry, okay. Spices
Okay, so
that
it's
make
not
egg whites not bad. I would say butter. That's not a spice, but it'll make it bad.
but that's
point,
okay. But the prepositional phrase "when eating clean" precludes butter. Like we're talking about.
I know, but like, why are you doing this?
So the only preparation that makes egg whites like as themselves a food is like an egg white omelet, right?
Right.
So I guess a kale and broccoli egg white omelet with a generous amount of hot sauce and black pepper
That's goodish.
is
Gibber
probably
peppers.
your best opportunity for that. I mean, basically an egg white omelet with other clean foods in them and a generous amount of hot sauce, because you can get away without using much salt. You can get away with using whatever terrible oil you're eating clean with.
Probably coconut.
Actually, no. Coconut oil, entirely acceptable for making omelets. Won't touch the smoke point. Next question from Kyle. How do I balance eating clean and still drinking a bottle of rum a day?
So that's like literally what you did. It's just balancing, right? You just got to like figure out.
Yeah, smaller bottles.
It's just smaller bottles. How many calories is in a bottle of rum, Dusty?
Well, no, I actually have an actual answer to this question, and that is to switch to what is known as rum agricole, or agricultural rum.
Is that as bad as it sounds?
Okay, so lots of rum, like the alternative to rum agricole is rum industriel, and these are all
That sounds awful.
Well, okay, so these are terms that were developed by the French when the French West Indies were a thing, and the difference between rum agricole and rum industriel is that rum industriel is liquor distilled from molasses, basically. You know,
that's not okay.
Like darker sugar that has
Right.
like more calories and like adjuncts and like dirty shit in it. Rum agricultural rum is distilled purely from cane juice, and so it's clear and frequently higher proof. And I mean, a lot of the dirty stuff that goes into rum gets like evaporated out when you distill it. But
That's incredible that you had an answer to that question.
but the argument that using purer products will lead to a purer final product, like purer inputs will lead to a purer final product, is probably true. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow would subscribe to that, and so I would stick to.
That's not useful at all. Gwyneth Paltrow would subscribe to that.
Well, you were just with me until I said her name.
But I'm just saying that is not useful. It hurts your argument just like it just did.
Well, okay, so my final point is that rum industrial, oftentimes, just like turbinado sugar, has some of the molasses from the mash like added back into it for color and like deeper like fermented sugar flavor. That pretty much never happens with rum agricole. So if you're eating clean, you may as well drink clean. And if you're drinking a bottle of rum, the cleanest rum is going to be rum agricole.
This has been Dalvin learning to cook. God, this is so easy.
I'm sorry rum agricole costs so much, Kyle.
Well, that's the cost of clean living, I guess.
Clean drinking.
Clean drinking, the cost of clean living.
Nick writes in, if he hits free agency, should the Vikes be interested in Alshon Jeffrey, and for how much?
Hold on, does Solomon the Wise Thomas count?
No.
Because you're not making a phrase, you're just... Okay. Sorry, what was the question?
You're pushing it. That's... I mean,
Solomon was the wise kid. Anyway, what's the question?
I'd like where you're at, but that's not very Rick Berman. Like that's like too clever by half.
You mean Chris Berman?
Yes, Rick Berman is the Star Trek guy who's actually cleverer than both of us. Chris Berman is who I meant. If he hits free agency, should the Vikings be interested in Alshon Jeffrey, and for how much? That's a pretty big if.
He won't, but yes, and for enough. What, $13 million a year? Great.
Yeah, any number that is less than Adrian Peterson's current contract, I think would be acceptable. Zen Cupid
Zach,
writes,
I'm not very Cunningham. No? Okay.
You are the one who is no longer Cunningham.
I'm frazzled on these. I like them, but I can't do them anymore.
I am not convinced that will stop you.
Of course it won't.
Zen Cupid writes in, if you had your pick of any free agent, but could only address one spot on the O-line using free agency, who would it be?
Any free agent. That's like...
Are we confident that it's not Kelvin Beachum?
Well, it's not.
Okay.
Because he was bad again. Let's see. So the thing is, there's higher quality free agents at guard, but there's also a lot more depth in the draft at guard. So that one's actually kind of difficult. There's a couple of right tackles, Marshall Newhouse, Riley Reef, Andrew Whitworth, Ryan Clady. But none of them are like, good. How about this? Okay. Ricky Wagner at right tackle is the guy I signed because I feel like the available left tackles from free agency are not good enough to make that the spot. And the available players at guard in the draft are good enough to make that not the spot. What about Derek? I walked into a Barnett.
Wait, so did he walk into a barn or did he walk into a net that was strung up in a bar?
Whichever is funnier, man. I'm agnostic to that.
Bug out bag Howard.
Oh, no, that's good. His name is Bug Howard, I think.
Yes.
But,
Ben Glassman? I used to be so good at this. I've lost confidence. I'm doing this for too long.
Lost confidence.
Ever since Manuel Nidero, I've just never been the same. Do you think the Vikes go after a wide receiver in the draft to compete with Treadwell? That's not hard. And if so, whom?
I think it is unlikely that they're going to go after a receiver for the explicit purpose of competing with Treadwell. I think that it is more likely that they'll find a receiver who will incidentally compete with Treadwell along with, Adam Thielen and so on. And so, by saying that, I've essentially said, if they go after a receiver, it'll be, on day 3, with a round 5, 6, or 7 pick. It's going to be hard to find a receiver, obviously in round 5, 6, or 7. But especially one in the late rounds that kind of fits what the Vikings want to do. So, for example, a potential receiver that could go at the top of round 5 is Josh Reynolds from Texas A&M. But he's big and he's productive and he's young, and that fits kind of all of those things. But he's big, tall, not big, wide. He's very skinny. He can get pushed around. Even though he has a large catch radius, he feels like he's not a red zone threat. But he would be maybe an interesting example of a guy that kind of fits that profile. Beyond that, they could go after Chad Hansen. I wouldn't actually be a huge fan of that, but he'd probably be available around 5 or 6. He's a guy that's getting talked up a lot, which I think is maybe not that great. The guy who's both young and productive in a speedster, Katie Cannon, could go pretty late. He would actually be a really interesting get, and I think that he's kind of undervalued by the draft community right now. Probably not Ishmael Zamora because he's got a bunch of off-field concerns, but he's pretty good. That's the only reason he'd be available around 5, 6, or 7. Yeah. So those are some names I throw around. It is going to be more difficult to find, that kind of guy.
Danny, isn't he or Isidora?
Yeah, okay, I like that. I'll accept it.
Oh, I had another one.
Did you? I don't know why I'm saying that I don't believe you.
Miles to go before I Garrett.
Oh, I like that. See, I was trying to think of something with Myles Garrett that used Garrett as the word garrote, as the way to kill someone. But I realized that wouldn't play, so I didn't come up with anything.
Yeah. I went for the peaceful poetry route. That was easier. NFL draft talker. What rookie running back do you think fits into our scheme the best, and how early would you take one?
Dalvin Cook fits into every scheme, so he probably fits into that one the best because he's the most talented. Aside from that, I don't actually think that Fournette fits as well. And again, relative to a bunch of other people, I'm not a big fan of Fournette. I think he's a second-round guy. And I think there's a bunch of second-round guys, and a lot of them I might take ahead of him, too. So, maybe Fournette. But, Samaje Perine, the Oklahoma running back that didn't punch a woman, he would fit. He's a, thudder who has the ability to win in short yardage situations and could complement Jerick McKinnon well. And I think that he's got, the athletic ability to play in zone schemes. I think he's got, the patience and willingness to let plays develop. To play in man power schemes as well as the hips for it. So he's a guy that'd be interesting. I wouldn't take a running back until day 3, so maybe round 4 actually. And you might be able to find some guys. You might even be able to find Samaje Perine, who I think is kind of being undervalued by the draft community at large. But for the most part, it'd be difficult to find a guy because I think that my guy Kareem Hunt, the guy I kind of like the most, he's not the best. Again, that's Dalvin Cook, but the guy I kind of like the most, Kareem Hunt, is probably going to be gone by then. But he would be, sort of a fantastic player to sort of mix in there with Jerick McKinnon. I think that he's not a pure power back, but I do think that he's a guy who can be complemented by Jerick McKinnon very well. Kareem Hunt displays more power than his size, so, he'd be nice. Donta Foreman is a guy that people are high on. CBS has him in the 4th round. If you can get him in the 4th round, do it. I think he's going to go in the 2nd. But he's this big dude, 250 pounds, not lightning fast, but pretty fast for a 250-pounder, and really agile, great feet. Corey Clement is kind of big, from Wisconsin, so a lot of people are probably familiar with him. He probably complements what the Vikings do pretty well. James Conner from Pittsburgh has played in a multiple scheme, that did zone and man. And he is a big back with balance, 240 pounds. He's listed 240 pounds. I bet he's lost weight. The thing about him is that he had cancer and missed a year, and is therefore his most recent year wasn't as productive as the pre-cancer years.
Yeah, talk about being tainted by injury.
Yeah. I think he's good. So whatever. I don't that's definitely a concern going in. You have to, talk to not your athletic trainers, but literally actual medical doctors and be what are the chances of remission here? That's that's the whole next level medical check stuff. But, he's a guy that you could get in day 3 that complements what the Vikings do really, really well and plays in a pro style running scheme that can also adapt itself to a variety of other styles. Big backs with balance are guys that I'm looking for, and he's definitely one of them. So those are the kind of guys that I'm kind of interested in. Alvin Smile, you're on Kodak Camara.
Jessamine School Lunch Italian Dunker.
It's okay.
Treston
Marlin, Return of the Mac. Boom.
Oh, nice. Treston de Little Engine de Coude.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Judd Zogez Hoodie, who told us he wasn't asking any questions, and I said that was fine.
Maybe he got angry that it was fine.
Well, I think he got jealous that Kyle Segal was the only one shitting up our mentions.
We're ruining the timeline.
I'm concerned about Arif's aggressive behavior lately. Fighting everyone, in parentheses. Is he on steroids? Are you on steroids, Arif?
I'm on steroids. I just know my worth now. I can't take this shit from everybody. I'll fight you, Huddy. Just for saying that. Wow, that sounded pretty aggressive, huh?
Dude, my eyebrow is arching so far. You can't hear it or see it. But it's you know the guy in the guy with the fake eyebrows in Foolie Cooley? That's me right now. My eyebrow is about to fall off.
Tyus, stop kidnapping the Princess Bowser.
I was 80% of the way there. Yours is a little better. Judge Mills Lane will allow it. Man, I can't read questions and play this game at the same time. This is unfair.
What about Anthony J. Walker? Is that too simple?
Nope, too easy.
Yeah, okay.
If Dusty and Arif were the finalists on The Bachelorette, what would either of them do to ensure victory over the other?
What are the kind of underhanded activities that people engage in The Bachelorette?
Yeah.
If I put
you're trying to lie and tell me that you don't watch The Bachelorette. Every sports writer loves The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
I don't get it, but I don't watch that much TV anyway. I just watch Netflix. So I don't know. I love trashy reality TV, but that just doesn't do it for me. My trashy reality TV is Top Chef, and I know a lot of people don't think that's trashy, but it's trashy.
It's pretty trashy. I've known people who have been on Top Chef, and it's even worse than Chopped. Chopped is a one-off game show, but Top Chef, they especially now, after the first few seasons, they realized that if you just put a bunch of chefs in a big house and filled it with booze, that they would just start sleeping with each other. Yeah. And now it's
season 4, I think, is when they were oh, yeah, we could do something with the sleeping with each other part.
Well, yeah, because the guy that won in season 3 was a chef from Boulder, Colorado, that slept with another chef who was on the show, and that caused some problems with another chef who was on the show from Boulder, whom he personally knew, but they got over that.
It was great.
At any rate, the producers learned that sort of thing was the ticket to ratings.
Storms that come in Norton?
Alvin Harris Kamara? No,
I already did Alvin Kamara. Alvin Smiley on Kodak Kamara.
Yeah, I don't know.
Candid Kamara, whatever.
Neither one was very good.
Damn it.
I actually know exactly what I would do to win the Bachelorette if it was just like you and me at the end.
I'm putting dog poo in your shoes. I don't know if that helps me, but like, probably.
I would replace your body wash with Nair so that it seemed like you had alopecia.
Jesus. Oh my God. That's great. I feel like I would notice like pretty quickly though.
Dude, have you ever used Nair before? It would be too late. Like you would immediately like.
But I'm not dousing my whole body in body wash right away. I put it on a loofah. I create some bubbles. If it doesn't create bubbles, maybe I'm suspicious. Maybe I'm not. And then I rub it on like a part of my body.
By the time you smell your body hair just like falling off, it's too late.
But it's only that part. And it's like, well, maybe I should have waxed my chest anyway.
Mojo Jojo Mathis.
No. It's too specific. That's as specific as the earlier one that I made that you didn't like.
That's fine. Matt Pepperidge Farm Milano Cookie. No. All right. I'm giving myself a yellow card on that one.
I'm seeing all these ones that have like promise, but I can't like turn them into anything.
Al Qadin, no cartoons of Muhammad.
What about a picture of Dorian Johnson?
I like it, but that's not very Rick Berman.
Chris Berman.
It's not very Chris Berman either. Speedy Gonzalez Noyle.
Yeah, okay, fine. I forgot he was in the draft. Yeah.
Noble Hops and Nwachukwu.
What?
Noble Hops.
Is Noble Hops a thing?
Anyone who has ever made beer should at Arif on NFL.
Great. I'm not part of the beer making community. That's not as big a community as you think.
Yeah, well, anyone who disagrees with that assertion, feel free to at Arif. James
Jake,
comes too quick.
My last name is Bud.
Jake, the Lone Ranger, flicks away a cigarette and then Tonto steps on his butt.
This class is really good. I don't think it's that we suddenly like tried to start Bermaning things. I think that like literally this class is just easier for it.
Michael Rector damn near killed her. Okay, I'm out of mailbag questions, so we should probably stop. We can maybe continue after I do the outro and do some outtakes, but we don't have to subject. I think we have made Eric sufficiently regret asking that question.
Isn't that what we do with all of the mailbag questions? Like, isn't that the idea? Is that every time someone asks us a question, we have to make them regret it?
I love the like fake adversarial relationship we have kind of foisted on our beloved listeners. Which, by the way, I should probably mention that William Arendt sent us $5 during our hiatus with the note, "Carry on, gentlemen," which I think tonight we have done. In like, if there was ever to be an episode where we came back from a break, I think we came back refreshed, and it showed tonight. This was some fine multimedia digital content.
Indeed, this is great multimedia digital content.
Is there anything that, I imagine you're very busy writing about stuff that everybody's going to know in like 3 weeks, but do you have anything that you would particularly like to plug at this?
No, so I mentioned the offensive line thing. I also did a version for linebackers where I looked at linebacker production and stuff like that. So I'm going to try and come out with age-adjusted production metrics for each position before the beginning of the combine, so that we kind of have an idea of where players stand analytically before the combine starts. And then after the combine, I will update all of those with, athleticism-adjusted versions of that. So that we'll have age, production, and athleticism combined together in one metric to help us determine which players are being undervalued or overvalued. And so I've got linebackers done for production metrics. I've got offensive linemen done for production metrics. The next one I'm working on are pass rushers, essentially for the Vikings defensive ends. And that one should be up very soon. Won't be up by the time this podcast is up, but very soon after. And I'm just going to go on down the line. So that's what I'm working on now. At some point, I'll produce a mock draft that features sort of the most productive / young versions of these guys that will be specific to the Vikings. So like round 2, like Roderick Johnson's the likely pick. So spoiler, that's the guy. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing until the combine starts. Then I'm going to be doing combine stuff. And then after the combine, I don't know, like a mock off season right before the off season starts, like with free agency and stuff.
Cool. Maybe some Japanese bug fights. Harness some cockroaches and let them battle it out in an octagon. 2 final things.
KD, he's got a cannon. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
we'll finish this later. Earlier, you said something racist about me, like claiming that I just like Julian Edelman and Adam Thielen because they're both white, and so is Tom Brady and Sam Bradford.
No, I said that you compared them because they're white. I didn't say you were racist. I said you were racist.
Well, I was a victim of racism against white people earlier tonight when I tried to go out for pad thai to a place that was suggested as highly regarded, and like they you can get all of their like stir fried Thai noodles on a spicy scale of 0 to 9.
Wow!
And I specifically asked for an
expansive scale.
I specifically asked for 9 spicy.
There's no way they gave you 9 spicy.
Oh, she didn't even bat an eye. She was like, okay. And she just like wrote something down. It was not 9 spicy. It was like 3 spicy. Like I get very little credit for the amount of chili I enjoy consuming from people who are not white because they assume that I am just another dumb white guy like Julian Edelman.
And there's also like no way you
Tom
can
Brady.
preempt it without seeming like a douchebag, right? Like 9 spicy, and I mean it. Or like, which is like maybe the least douchebaggy version of it. Or like 9 spicy. And I eat chili peppers like all the time. I'm a mixologist at a bar, and I eat spices all the time. So please make it an actual like. Well, no, so the version of preemption sounds douchey.
The one way to get like a clear path to 9 spicy without any pushback or anything is to say it in the server's native language.
That like seems douchey anyway.
Well, and it's a hard target to hit because since I'm white, all Asian people look alike.
Oh right, so you can't like.
I can't tell.
Wouldn't you just assume it's Thai?
Well, no. In this instance, she turned out to be Chinese.
Oh wow, that would have been a huge misstep.
And so I was disabled. I mean, I can't ask for like 9 spicy in either Chinese or Thai. So it's not that. I mean, only a couple of other Asian languages.
It was like a theoretical loss.
Yeah. I mean, I could, if depending on the there's no way I can continue this sentence without sounding really, really racist. So I'm just gonna.
Yeah, no way. Really, keep going.
Those are 2 Asian languages that I have 0 facility in. So regrettably, I could not cut straight to the chase. But I feel like even if you're like a server at a Thai place, you at least have to ask, "Are you sure?"
Okay, yeah. No, I agree.
Like just being like, "Yeah, okay," and then like serving me a dish that is an obvious lie is not the correct solution.
One time when I was in Philadelphia, not that this podcast hasn't been going on forever anyway, but one time when I was in Philadelphia, we were at a street vendor, me and my mom, obviously brown, like
my mom
quite clearly. And whatever. Actually, that didn't even have a sentence, so there was no subject or object, so it didn't really matter.
All right, fragment guy.
Wait, the whole sentence was the words "me and my mom." Anyway, we're at a street vendor, and my mom speaks like broken-ish English. Like it's very obvious she's not from the United States. And we like order whatever. Like so, I order something like medium spicy, right? Because I like spicy food, but I don't want like super spicy food, especially because I was going through a period from the ages of 0 to 17 where I was rejecting my parents' culture, and that included spicy food. And And so I got something like medium spicy. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be sure about medium spicy? Which, again, kind of weird for a brown dude. Even a brown dude with a very obviously American accent like I have. But yeah, whatever. So I ate it. It was actually pretty spicy. I was kind of surprised. So my mom orders not like hot, but Tiger. It's the hottest spice that they have. They've got like mild, medium, hot, very hot, and Tiger. Like,
and there's like a little drawing around the word Tiger to indicate just how hot it is. Yeah,
right, exactly. And she goes, are you sure? Like in a very different are you sure than for me. You go, are you sure? Look, old lady, you're about to get your face melted off. Are you sure this is what you want? Yeah, like there was like a rolling cloud of thunder behind her. And
that's all I want. Like if that's all I ask for is.
The thing is, after my mom said yes, she argued with my mom, which is just this amazing interaction of like two immigrant old ladies arguing with each other about spice.
The clerk is like, you don't want this, trust me. And your mom is like, no, I actually do. Bring it.
And my mom is like, you don't even know where I'm from. We have the spiciest food, which is like not true, but close enough for it to be true for the purposes of this conversation. And and they go back and forth, and she's like, okay, fine, you want this, you get it. Which is like, that's the worst, I think. It's not the arguing, it's the fine. Like you're in for it. So my mom gets the food. She can't even take more than 4 bites of it.
See, that's actually what I was looking for. Is the like the you want it spicy? I'll give you spicy, white boy.
Yeah.
you want some spicy food, you old Bengali lady? All right, I got some spice for you.
Like you wanted vengeful spice, like angry that you asked spicy.
Like if you made me have this conversation with you, I'm gonna spice it up. Garrett, Hammer, and Sickles.
There's a guy named Garrett Sickles?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, congrats on your good fortune.
Jamari hit the easy button at Staples.
Jeremy, how do they make a rainbow sprinkle?
Ooh, beat me to it. All right. This will be continued in outtake form later, but for now, I forgot what my other thing was. I was so incensed by my treatment. As a white person who enjoys spicy food, why would you lie to somebody about that?
Yeah, that's a bit beyond the pale for me.
Ah! All right. Well, I remember the other thing. Season 5 is slowly approaching, so your submissions for Season 5 formula will be appreciated. The Harambe thing is kind of played out, I think, at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Like when when a 22-year-old kid, rugby player that I work with was like, oh yeah, we just bought a bunch of shot glasses. They say, Harambe took a shot for you, now do it for him. I was like, all right. I think
we're done here.
Can I get a shot glass that says jump the shark? So Season 5 formula submissions will be accepted at NorseCodePodcast@gmail.com or at NorseCodeDN or any of the other places that we now include in our pre-recorded end stinger, which I will let you enjoy. We'll be back next week, but until then, spoons out.
CFO, you need to put body wash on this to make sure it's not near a loofah. God, I was so close.
I don't know what your... Tease nuts Tabor.
Damn it!
We'll see you next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, or wherever else fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, who can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. Our intrepid producer and occasional co-host James Pagachnik can be found on Twitter at Big Mono or curating the official Norse Code Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. I'm your host with a firm grasp of the obvious, Dusty O'Connell, and my name is my handle on Twitter. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, your one-time donation can be made at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Please visit our website, NorseCodePodcast.com, where you'll find links to our Facebook and YouTube pages, along with the episode archive and some other good stuff. And any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be emailed to NorseCodePodcast.com. On behalf of James and Arif, my name is Dusty, and we all thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.